My name is Andrew Scully. This is an interview with Mendocino Undercurrent. I'm joined today by Trent James. Trent is a former Mendocino County Sheriff's Deputy. He was also employed in Mendocino County as a probation officer. And after following his service with the county sheriffs, he joined the Willits Police Department and served there for a time, left law enforcement. And subsequent to that, Trent, you ran for sheriff in this county, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Great. Okay. So you've got quite a bit of experience in law enforcement. And what's your job now, Trent?
I work for myself. I'm a private investigator.
Great. Okay. And Trent James has joined me today at my request because he's come up in an interview I conducted on a story I'm working on, tragedy that's happened out here. Trent came up in an interview with another source. And so Trent's joined me today for an interview to comment on some of the issues that are going on. And the issue that's going on that we're talking about today is the continuing tragedy and really horror show that's gone on for decades and a very long time in this place in Mendocino County called Covelo. Covelo, it's a little town. It's not a city, it's a town, a part of the unincorporated area of Mendocino County, Mendocino County is a very large county. It's very sparsely populated. It's very remote. And so there are not very many people in it. Covelo's a very remote, cut off valley with only one way in and out. And it's a place of sadness and horror and terror for indigenous people. It's a place the federal government and California government annihilated many Indians back when they were first settling this county with white people. They drove and annihilated Indian bands into small valleys that there was no way out of, like Round Valley, to finish these people off. And the people that were left after the forces of the settlers got done with them, they're still in this county. Some of them live in Covelo, in this place, Round Valley. And the place is governed by the Round Valley Indian tribe. And they are the first line of government. The second line is Mendocino County, and then up to the state, etc. Now, Trent, you served in that place. We're going to come back to that. A lot of your service in the sheriff's unit was in Covelo. We're going to come back to that in a moment. But in present instance is a crisis and flashpoint reached in just this last week, Trent. We're conducting this interview on Sunday morning. Last Sunday, 1 week ago today, an emergency meeting of the Covelo Tribal Council was convened. Virtually unprecedented to convene this kind of council meeting, in which it was basically a response to the recent murders, very closely apart in time, of two very young people. Murders happen all the time out there in Covelo, Trent. Lots of crime happens out there, as you will talk about in a minute, but these really caught people's attention, even in the crime-soaked atmosphere of Covelo, because of the nature of the issues, the horrific violence involved. These people were slaughtered, really, Trent, and they were very young. The first man was a man named Nick Whipple. He was killed on March 29th, and he was 20 years old. And just a couple of weeks later, a very young girl, 16 years old, Ruby Montalongo, was killed. And after that second killing, and just the horrific nature of them, everybody in the community basically rose up and they just hit the panic button. I would say they were sick and tired of these things happening, And they basically said, we need some action. And the tribal council called an emergency meeting. And out of that emergency meeting came a state of emergency, the declaration of a state of emergency by the tribal council of Covelo. The state of emergency declares we are in an unprecedented and just quite predictable, though, crime just oversurge. We cannot handle this. We'd have nothing to handle it with. They're not getting any resources. They get their take is they're just getting overwhelmed without any help from anybody. Nobody's helping police this area and get some help to these people that are basically cut off and getting victimized by these criminals and horrific events happening. Now, very quickly, Trent, people mobilized and got into gear. People were targeted by the tribe to get the state of emergency. The state of California was one of the agencies. They got this message saying, help us, we've got a state of emergency. It was communicated to the state of California, to the county of Mendocino, to the federal partners, all these different law agencies that help police the area, most especially the county sheriff's office, obviously, because they are the primary policing agency on that area in the county as a whole, and in the Round Valley community, the Mendocino County sheriffs provide the primary police presence. The tribal police also are there. Also, CHP, California Highway Patrol, FBI, Department of Fish and Game. Many agencies have some jurisdiction, but the primary people would be the county sheriffs. The county sheriff is Matt Kendall. He made a very rapid response to this situation, Trent, not just by my judgment. I believe the tribe thinks that Sheriff Kendall responded quickly to the declaration. He got out there that day. The immediate declaration and the immediate response of agencies, according to the people I've talked to at the tribe, has been appropriate and hopeful. But there's also this profound watchful waiting and profound wringing of hands and waiting and hoping, because they've seen promises before. They've seen commitments for actions, and they've seen lots of talk and then nothing on the ground many times. And now, Trent, I know I've kind of given a long background here, but the reason you're here on the interview at all talking to me is because you came up. Your name specifically came up with regard to the situation when I was interviewing Rosento Cordova. And Rosento Cordova is the Round Valley Indian Tribe personnel director. He is a highly placed senior executive within the Round Valley Tribe organization. He's not on the tribal council per se, but he advises the tribal council. He's a member of the indigenous people that populate that valley. He's an indigenous tribal member. So, and he's very well qualified to speak to this situation in Covelo because just of those factors. He's personnel director of the tribe. He's a tribal member. He's lived in and around Covelo for more than 20 years. That alone qualifies him. But he's also got some other issues that came to my attention, Trent. The reason I contacted him at all was Rosento Cordova was the point person on the declaration. He was the one that was tasked by the tribe to contact allied partners like the CHP, the Mendocino County Sheriffs, FBI, federal partners, state partners to get some help. So he's the guy that the tribal council said, look, we want to get this word out that we made the declaration. You're the guy that's going to do that. And so he drafted the language. I saw his name there. I called him and I found out this is a man quite well qualified to talk on the issue because of the aforementioned points and these. He was a tribal police officer, Trent. And you know that because you actually served with him when you were out in Covelo. We'll come back to that in a minute. But he was a tribal police officer. And so he knows this kind of issue about the murders and the situations out there, I would think better than almost anybody. And I plumbed that resource because I'm a reporter, Trent. And everybody else covering this story, predictably, they probably took the press release from this or that agency and just wrote, oh, terrible murders that happened. Well, let's move on to the next thing. Well, my approach to journalism is a little different, Trent. And we go to the forks of the creeks to do our sourcing. I don't just crib people's work from other writers. I don't just copy and paste things from other people that other people write. I also don't write off press releases. If something happens, I go to the source and talk to the people involved. And nobody's closer to the source of this than Sheriff Matt Kendall, who I have a close personal relationship with, and Rosento Cordova, who's on site, served as a police officer there, knows these people, and is a member of the organization out there. And so these two people have informed my view of the situation and called you into the room. And let me brief you on what Sheriff Kendall's comments were, and then Rosento. So Sheriff Kendall, he is a very honest and forthright man, in my opinion, in my dealings with him over several years, Trent. He comes from Covelo. Let's start with that. Sheriff Kendall was born in Covelo, and he has spent a ton of time in law enforcement. His family serves in various capacities. His brother is a highly placed chief in CAL FIRE. This is a family dedicated to service, and no one, in my mind, could question Matt Kendall's commitment to the community and Covelo in general. Now, having said that, he paints a disturbing and not very, I would say, not very hopeful picture to me, because the factors he cites in these issues are as follows. First of all, unchecked. He cares deeply. He's outraged about what happened. And he wants to do something. But then we have some issues. One issue is we have unchecked alcoholism and drug addiction and hopelessness. There's no jobs. There's a general atmosphere of crime and lawlessness that pervades the community, and hopelessness. These people are preyed on by these criminals that he can't put away, because he can't put them away because they're kind of hanging around to the general alcoholism and drug addiction issue, but also because Sacramento continuously has degraded its criminal laws. So according to Matt Kendall, he directly told me a ball of heroin that used to enable him to put somebody inside for a long stretch, get a guy off the street in Covelo, put him inside. Now that guy doesn't even get a ticket, according to Matt Kendall. Another big problem is, again, the unchecked alcoholism and drug addiction, hopelessness. There's not much a sheriff can do about that, and I would have to agree. Another problem is that he cannot compete. He can't compete and get people on the job in Covelo. Cannot put people into those sheriff boots, Trent, because according to Matt Kendall, this is a very honorable man. He directly told me, he said, Andrew, I got hiring problems. I can't put people on the street, any part of my street in the county, because I can't find qualified applicants when there's nobody really available to hire because of the economic situation we're in. I can't find people that can even pass a background test. He told me on a recent background group of people that had passed all the other parts of the exam, he had 10 qualified people, only 2 made the background thing. And then those 2 got hired out by other agencies like Sonoma or other places where they'd rather work, according to Matt Kendall. He says that he's well paid. Matt Kendall, quote, says, we are not underpaid in this county. I make as sheriff and my deputies make an adequate and fair wage. That's not the problem. The problem is we still can't get people because they can't pass our background, or they want to work somewhere else. They won't come work here. So that's a big problem he'll cite. And then, so we got these issues of the background criminality of the area, the hopelessness, can't put people on the ground. And then other factors he cited are that he has a very small force of people, Trent, to deal on his sheriff's unit. Very small amount of resource to cover a big area with lots of demand. And yet, I know Matt Kendall quite well, and he's a good lawman, Trent. And he told me straight up, "Hey, I put my resources where the demand is. The demand for service calls, the lion's share of it comes out of Covelo, and that is where I put the lion's share of my resources, right back where they are needed. We go out there when we get a call. We're out there." And yet he says he takes sniping from other areas of the county for overcommitment of resource to Covelo. He says he has to defend himself against other areas because they say, "How come you're putting so many people out there in Covelo?" So I would say Matt Kendall's thoughts are, he's challenged by the factors he's challenged by, and then he's got people trying to take him down for when he is out there. And finally, he showed up he was at the tribal council meeting, and people in the tribal area are saying, "How come you're not out here more? Why aren't you out here more?" And he pointed out, "Hey, listen, Covelo, you folks account for the lion's share of service calls, and we do respond to those." So those are the points Matt Kendall makes. Now, Rosento Cordova, when I spoke to him, again, Trent, he's a well-placed man to comment on these issues, I think. And he made the following observations about the situation. He said that, yes, he feels that a lot of things are needed. He thinks there's room for improvement on all sides. That's a direct quote from Mr. Cordova. There is room for improvement on all sides here, including the tribe, people's behavior, people's personal behavior, etc. And we have to recognize what it is on the ground there. However, he makes a couple of interesting points. One is that he's been there a long time, Trent, and he said that it's been years, many, many years since they've had any kind of regular police patrol presence in Covelo. He said that the deputies, they'll come out for the calls, but they're between calls. There's no calming patrol presence, is the phrase he used, that other areas of the county he thinks may get. They don't get it there in Covelo. They don't see lawmen out there or lawwomen unless there's been a horrific crime. Then they're there to punch the clock, get the info, and leave. Is pretty much the vibe I got there. I would say he also, definitely Mr. Cordova, cited the fact that there are no resident deputies in Covelo. He said in the past days, there was up to 4 deputies, sheriffs stationed all the time, Trent, apparently, lived there. He said they lived there, they cared about it. In fact, this is where your name came up, Trent. He said, just quite an open-ended question. I was asking about department resource allocation, and he said, right, we don't have anybody living here and haven't had for years. He said, in fact, he said, we can tell we know, and we're not dumb up here. And he said, it's been years since we've had anybody that even wanted to be here. And we can tell when somebody wants to be here and cares about us. And he said, the last time it's been several years, Andrew, he told me, since anybody cared or wanted to be here. And he specifically mentioned Trent James and Hank Stolpe. He mentioned 2 names to me. Now, I don't know Mr. Stolpe, but your name I knew because you ran for sheriff. I interviewed you then and came to know you. And so when he mentioned your name, I thought, okay, well, let's see what Mr. James has to say about this situation. So, the Rosento, I think I told you his comments were, yes, we have a police presence here, but not a lot and not enough to calm the situation down. Why don't we get people out here like Ukiah gets? How come, he feels like, I believe it could be fair to say maybe they're kind of second cousins that don't get all the attention. Yes, and I think that kind of fairly sums up his comments. He said we've got this. He's a very poignant man. He said he called it the plight of Round Valley. The plight of Round Valley. We're out here, in this isolated area. We need help, and we're very much hoping to get it. So, the last thing I'll say about his take is that he feels they're at this critical change possibility moment where the crisis has been brought, or these events have brought things to a crisis point. Now we're at a thing that they've seen before, where people are saying, okay, there's a problem and we're going to do something, but they've seen this before and they've been crushingly disappointed by the failure when the agencies say they're going to do something and then nothing changes. So they're in this period of watchful waiting where they said, people have said they're going to be there, but what we need is his response. His quote is response, assistance, resources. In other words, we need some money and people actually out here. Okay, now Trent, I've talked for a long time. The point is to get your thoughts and interview you. Trent James, former deputy sheriff, candidate for sheriff. You ran against Matt Kendall. Matt Kendall beat you in the election, Trent, 8 or 9 months ago. You ran against a person that was well positioned to win. He was he was unopposed in this election, the primary election last May and June. It was held in June. He was the only person running. He'd been sheriff for almost 4 years, appointed by the former sheriff at the very beginning of the former sheriff's term. So he'd been there a long time. Now he's running for election and gonna win. And you jump in the last minute, you jump in a kind of quixotic, charging at windmill, some would say, campaign to take this guy on. And yet, even though you jumped in with only a couple of weeks of the campaign season left, there was only 2 weeks before the election concluded, you managed to pick up I think it was around 22% of the vote, which I researched was one of the highest percentages ever garnered by a write-in candidate in California history. And you did it in about 8 days, I think so it's kind of, it's for Matt Kendall to win by 78% is a crushing victory, but it's also, it makes you wonder, well, how come this other guy picked up 22% so quick and on a write-in campaign? So, let's start with that, Trent. Tell us about the campaign and why you ran and how much you picked up that much vote. How'd you do that?
Okay, so thanks for having me on, Andrew, and wanting to interview me regarding Covelo specifically. I do have a lot to say on the matter, and I just want to start by saying that it's the tragedies that have occurred out there, since I left, and obviously more recently, it's truly just horrific. I mean, there's no words, and it's very sad to see everything that's occurred and been going on. But to address your question that you just asked, so I never intentionally, after I got out of law enforcement, I didn't intend to run for sheriff. That was something that I had a lot of people in various parts of Mendocino County reach out to me via text message, phone calls, emails, social media when the campaign or the election was occurring. And they said they weren't happy. I'm talking about hundreds of people here, and most of which I didn't even know. And they were unhappy with the current status quo. They were unhappy with things, not getting done the way that they feel that they should, or handled the way that they should be handled. A general feeling of complete lack of caring and empathy on behalf of law enforcement in general. And they wanted a change. They weren't happy with what was in place at the time and what's still in place now. And so, I didn't have the intention to do that at all, to run for that position. And it was just due to want and need for change, and I could hear it in their voices and read their emotion and the messages that they would send me. And I was always the cop that did care, and I put myself first. I was very selfless in terms of my work, and that's very reflected, and nobody can take that away from me or deny that, especially when I worked in Covelo. But I chose to run as a write-in candidate. I wanted to be that person for the people of Mendocino County. I'm from there too. I grew up there, and in Ukiah specifically. And so, but I had a lot of connection to other areas of the county during my time in law enforcement, the Willits area, Laytonville area, Covelo mostly. And, I've always wanted to, been in the business of helping people. And so put myself on as a write-in candidate, meaning that people had to write my name on the ballot. So that was a huge disadvantage for me. Matt Kendall's name was already on there. You just had to check the little box. So instead of campaigning for months, like I should have, if I was going to, had the foresight to run, and I wanted to run from the beginning, I campaigned for, it was like 6 or 7 days. I did it very, very quickly. I went to as many areas of the county as possible. I did meet and greets and a lot of other things. And I did the best that I could with a very short amount of time, and the fact that I was a write-in candidate, and I got, about 20% of the overall vote, which it tells me, based on the number that I did obtain, that if I had campaigned if I did that in like 5.
And why you're on the screen today is that you came to my attention during that process, and Rosento Cordova mentioned you. You were the only sheriff deputy in that place for a long time. Is that true? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about, your service there in Covelo and what you came to know about that place?
So in terms of Covelo, I did work the vast majority of my career as a deputy sheriff with the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office in Covelo, meaning I was assigned to that area for, it was about 5 years straight. And, there was times obviously that I would work in the Willits area, Laytonville area and stuff like that, but predominantly I was in Covelo daily. And then I also lived there as well and was a resident deputy. So my house, the house that I lived in was there, and I was there daily for a very long time. And that's when I initially met Rosento, who I have a great deal of respect for in multiple capacities. And he was a tribal police officer at the time. That's when I first met him. But in terms of policing Covelo, so I like to relate it to kind of the analogy of being a sheriff in the old Western days, like the 1800s, where it's one sheriff and you're policing an entire town. That's kind of like what it was for me in Covelo, since I did work out there alone. The nearest town is Willits, which is over an hour away. So it's a very isolated area of the county. And it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, extremely rural. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, but it's way out there. So, but generally I was out there alone. Obviously tribal police guys were around, if they were on the days that they were working. The days that they were off, obviously it was just me. But it's different than any other area of the county. It's different than Ukiah, vastly different than the coast, and Laytonville, Leggett, Piercy, all those places. And you have to police it differently. It's kind of hard to put into words, but it takes a certain type of person and personality, temperament, and general understanding and empathy and life experience to be able to be successful out there. And it does, you're right, have a horrible, horrible history, dating back to the 1800s. And then they also have had a lot of bad experiences with law enforcement out there over the years.
To put it mildly.
To put it mildly, absolutely. Yes, you're correct. And, I've heard a lot of the stories. There were guys that worked out there prior to me, resident deputies that have, fired, and all kinds of just horrible things, right? So they didn't have a lot of trust in law enforcement in general, rightfully so. And I understood that. And it was, rather challenging for me when I, as a white guy working on a reservation, when I first started, but I persevered and I overcame a lot of those challenges, and I made it a point to put in all of my time, personal time, and everything and effort selflessly to try to better that community and try to get to know the people there. And I did, and I was very successful, and I was good at my job. And I'm just stating that as a matter of fact. And I do have a lot of friends there, and there's a lot of good, honest, hardworking people there that, have a tremendous amount of respect for. But it's it's kind of hard to put into words in terms of the differences, but it is definitely a unique place, and you can't treat it like anything else.
The sheriff right now, he's the shot caller out there, and he's made some comments about the situation. I've shared with you what those are. I believe he said that. I've told you the factors he cited that are in play. He states he gets a tremendous amount of support. There's a paradox. He told me there's a paradox there. The people there and throughout the county are very supportive of law enforcement, as you know, Trent, but particularly in Round Valley, particularly the Covelo people are very much supportive. They back law enforcement to the hilt. There's no defund the police there. There's nobody, agitating for, defund the police. They want to fund more police. They love the police and law enforcement out there, in spite of the horrific record that law enforcement has written over the years, including, I've heard allegations unreal on their face, but quite well resourced and vetted, I think, in the record, quite well vetted claims and records that exist to the effect that one of the sheriff's commanders prior to your arrival there, a guy that commanded the detachment in Covelo, was running a sex swap ring. He was running it with his wife and ordering other sheriff's deputies to participate. This is a widely known, it sounds like something out of Days of Our Lives, some soap opera, but it's widely known in this county, quite well vetted. The county settled with a man. They made a settlement. It gave him money. So, a man committed suicide up there. It's a sordid and unbelievable story, yet it happened. And so this is the backdrop this stuff happens out on. And Matt Kendall, has said, look, we answer the service calls. We're out there. In fact, we go out there more than any place else, is Matt Kendall's response. And yet, Rosento says, well, we can see they're out here, but they're not out here in between. And we don't. And so what's your response to Sheriff Kendall's, what is your reaction to Sheriff Kendall's response to the crisis, Trent?
Yeah, so and you're right about the wife swapping incident, factual, true, and documented. And that's that goes into a lot of the distrust and issues that current law enforcement would face over the years, and again, rightfully so, because you have cops that are supposed to protect a community and they get involved in things like that. And that's what makes it challenging to fill that role as a resident deputy, because again, there's been so many issues. When Tom Allman, the prior sheriff, when I volunteered to go to Covelo, so I chose to do that personally. Nobody made me. Nobody even hinted at the fact that at the sheriff's office, command staff level, that they wanted me to go live there. I chose to do that. I chose to get rid of my place in Ukiah and go out there and, be a full presence and, spend more time there, because I knew that that's what it was going to take. And we can get into that a little later. But yeah, so it again, when I told Tom Allman I wanted to do that, he told me to my face, if it was anybody else, he would have said no, because of all of those issues. And that leads into some other things that I'm going to discuss here. But so in terms of, I'll start with Kendall and then talk about Rosento, kind of the things that he said, or whatever you want to get into in the middle of that. But so in terms of Kendall, and I'm going off of what you just told me, right? Because I don't read anything that guy says in any press releases or, really anything that he's affiliated with. So I'm going off of your statements that you told me. But what I'm hearing is a lot of excuses with absolutely zero solutions. Not one solution that I hear in any of that, unless I'm missing something. And he gave a lot of political answers. At the end of the day, he is a politician. He has said publicly that, I'm not a politician, I'm a sheriff. No, you're an elected official, you're a politician, and these are very political answers, right? And you're not seeing, the public doesn't see the full scope and the other side of this. Okay, they're getting shown, it's like a sleight of hand situation, in my opinion. He's showing the community this thing over here while he's, distracting them with this while he's doing this over here, or not doing it, right? So I kind of took notes here, so I'm going to look down at the things that you told me that he said. So his first the first thing that he blames is because that's just what it is. I'm going to call it what it is. And it's the culture, poverty and drug abuse, drug addiction and alcoholism. And, basically claiming that the way that certain people live is why this town is the way that it is in terms of the crime rate. So statistically, yes, I will agree with him on its face value that it is statistically proven that lower, impoverished areas, places that are abundant with drug addiction and drug abuse and things like this, can they breed more crime? Yes, absolutely. However, instead of looking at it the way that he does and says that I'm the sheriff, there's nothing I can do about it, with that negative, cynical, defeatist attitude and continuing to do what he is doing, which is just using it to fall back on as an excuse. Hey, this is the culture here. This is the lack of job opportunities, the drug use. I can't do anything about this. It is what it is, and it's never going to change. And that's basically what I'm hearing. And that would be the common mentality of most of the guys, especially the command staff level, lieutenants and up, that they would have about Covelo, including Shannon Barney, the lieutenant that was from Covelo, just like Matt Kendall. But, that's a whole other thing. But it's like, why don't you, instead of looking at it that way, why don't you do what I did? And again, this is real life applicable experience. These are things that I did and things that I saw. So I didn't look at it like that. I tried to do what I could. Why don't you, instead of having that attitude, be like, what can I do to try to make a difference? And again, this goes back to kind of what Rosento said, where it's like they're both, the tribe and the sheriff's office can be doing things better. So yes, the tribe can, attempt to, better its own community, of course. But I'm talking about the sheriff's office here and like the solutions to some of these problems. So why don't you, look like, what can I do to improve the situation? What can I do to make it a little bit better? Because that is the issue. And again, that plagues a lot of reservations in the country. For me, how I took it and I looked at it is like, I start with the youth. I start with the kids because that's where it starts. And they look at a lot of their family members, their uncles, their brothers, their dads, whatever, moms have been to prison. And a lot of them there, that's kind of almost like a rite of passage. And it's something that some of them look forward to. So that's why I spent a lot of time at schools, the high schools, the middle school, the elementary school, and I interacted with a lot of kids. And I was able to relate to them, a lot of them based on my personal experiences growing up as well, and similar mentalities. And so because of that, I know that I changed the lives of at least 3 of them because they told me so. 2 graduated the same year. They messaged me and said, thank you for everything. And they really, said that I helped them tremendously. Could they have been... And most of those kids are very, very intelligent, and they have a lot going for them, and they're a lot of potential. But and then another one graduated the year after and said the same thing, like, "Thank you, Trent." And what I just try to do is show them that there is another path, there is another way of life that they could go down versus just prison or just being addicted to drugs or whatever. You try to be a mentor and somebody that they can look up to, somebody they can respect, because a lot of those kids don't have that. They don't have that in the household. And again, that comes down to, yes, the kind of the culture thing there. But again, like, if you can change like 3 kids' lives, guess what? That's 3 kids that didn't get murdered. That's 3 kids that didn't murder somebody, that didn't get kidnapped, whatever. That's worth it by itself. Okay. And I did the same thing with adults, drug addicted adults that lived on the reservation. I had them say the same thing, not like in abundance, some of them, yeah, like you're not, if you want to have that, it's not even like a pessimistic attitude. In some cases, it is a realistic attitude that, some will not change, right? But I did that as well with adults. And they would tell me that later, much later, after I even left Covelo. They would message me on social media and say, hey, like, you really changed my life. And at the time that I was helping them, I didn't really, I was always in the business of helping, like I said, try to help people and better their situation and treat them like humans, treat them with respect. And but at the time, I didn't think that I was going to have an impact on these various individuals like I did. And I ended up realizing that fact later once they would tell me these things. And I'm like, holy shit, I actually did something. But at the time, my main goal was to just listen to them, try to give them advice, and, to show them that they had somebody that actually gave a fuck about their lives. Some of them like didn't want to be alive anymore and stuff like that. So the main solution to that is, again, community policing. That is what is going to help that problem. Like, yeah, no, you instead of just, like I said, falling back on that excuse over and over and over, it's just how it is. It's just how it is. This is just how Covelo is. This is just Covelo. I can't tell you how many times I heard that working at the sheriff's office. That was like most people's attitude, cops there, again, at the command staff level also, and including guys that were from Covelo. That's just Covelo. It's just how it is. Like, I never thought that way. Like, I just didn't. And they're human beings. Okay. And again, it's no different than anywhere else. In Ukiah, you're going to have criminals there that are never going to change their ways. Okay. But there's also some that you can help and change their way of thinking and how they do things. And again, mostly that's starting with the kids. And that was a main, focus of mine while I policed out there. And everybody knows it. Again, nobody can deny that or take that away from me, because I was at the schools all the time doing these things and interacting with their parents. I was going to houses also and doing a lot of things that were not a standard on its face cop function. Like just, hey, Trent, some parents would hit me up, Trent, my kid's not going to school. And a lot of people are going to give the thing like, well, Trent, you're not, like, these parents should parent their kids. Yeah, but in some of these cases, they do try their best, and I've seen it. Okay. But it's like, you got some badass kids sometimes. And I know because I was one of them growing up, where didn't matter what my mom told me, I was not listening, no matter what the discipline was, what the punishments were. I didn't give a shit. So I was able to relate to a lot of that. And some of these parents saw that, and I would, go to homes and have one-on-ones with some of these kids sometimes. And it's like, but that's what it takes to get to the culture. And it's like you start, and it's a slow grind. You might not see huge change in a year, 2, 3, even 5, but you start to do that consistently for long periods of time. You're going to notice a difference. I promise you. So again, give a solution to this problem, Matt Kendall. Don't just, it's just the culture, just how it is, just Covelo. Like, I don't have that negative attitude. And, when you look at it differently, in a more positive aspect, and like, what can I do to improve the situation? You're going to find a solution with that. I promise you. That is one thing that he blames. Again, I do agree with it to some extent that can cause issues. So the next thing that he talks about is the decriminalization in the state of California, or in the nation, actually. But, in the state of California is kind of where this started. So I do agree with Matt Kendall. Statistically, okay, it's going to have an impact. It will. There is some impact to a certain extent when you lessen the severity of the punishment that you get with these various crimes. And specifically, he keeps using the example of a ball of heroin, right? Like he's saying that like he says, I'm from Covelo 18 million times in various certain ways. And like, so that can play a factor, but again, that wasn't something that was any different than when I worked there and I policed there. It was exactly the same thing. That hasn't changed at all. The prop had already passed, that decriminalized, drugs and some other crimes. So, for example, when I worked there, personal use of meth and heroin and all that stuff, it was still a misdemeanor, just like it is today. That didn't change. And sales and a ball of heroin, what does that even mean, man? What are you talking about? Are you talking about sales quantity? That's still a felony in California. That's still a felony in Mendocino County. It was a felony when I worked there. Okay. And you want to, complain and blame decriminalization, which again, I'm not saying is not a factor in some of these things in guys like looking at it. I'm not going to get a huge punishment so I can get away with this type of shit. Okay. That is some of their mentalities, of course. But for example, I pulled over a guy when I lived there. He was on parole, and he, from prison, and he had an ounce of methamphetamine, and that is a lot of meth. Sales quantity, 100%, right? Another felony because he's on parole. And transportation of sales of narcotics, blah, 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 blah. So multiple felonies, right? And I arrest him. The DA gives him, the district attorney in Mendocino County gives him, it was like 30 days in jail. And I was so mad that I called his parole officer, who's a friend of mine, and he agreed with me. He's like, this is fucking bullshit. He's like, this is half the reason I'm going to stop being in parole anymore. But so it's not this. So that was still a felony though, right? All those felonies were still real felonies in the state of California. That didn't change. The big issue that Matt Kendall will not say, because it will make him look horrible. He can't say this, so I'm going to say it because I don't give a shit. What's he going to do about it? He can't fire me. So whatever, like, he's not going to say this because it's going to destroy his relationship with the DA. The big issue, a huge issue component to this, aside from decriminalization that he keeps falling back on, is the DA's office unwilling to prosecute or giving these guys like the deal of a lifetime, plea deals that are a joke. It's comical. And this would deter guys that I worked with on the street, cops, from doing their job at all sometimes. They're like, not only it's felonies that you're arresting these people for. All right. So that doesn't change. So it's the DA that gets it. And he's like, he has the authority to sentence them to the sentencing guidelines, 2 years, 6 years, 8 years in state prison. But he allows these plea deals, or he just doesn't want to prosecute because it doesn't affect him personally. I saw that out there too. It was a lot of, it's a small county again. So not just like the hiring things and stuff that goes on at Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, or getting rid of people for certain biases and personalities. But guess what? That happens with certain cases too. If he knows it's a very political, media, newsworthy case, he'll go hard at it. If it's not, and it's something that doesn't affect him, he won't give a shit, because the DA's office too looks at it like just Covelo. I've talked to a lot of people in the DA's office. I spent a lot of time down there in law enforcement. They have the same mentality. Covelo gets deprioritized over everything else. It is looked at as just a whatever place by a lot of these guys. I never did that. That's why I chose to move there. And I love that place and a lot of people in it. And I'm irritated because of these excuses that with no solution at all. It's just like keep falling back on the same things. We can't do this because of this. Can't do this because of that. No. Critically think for once in your life, in your career, and try to create a solution to these issues. Okay. So again, it was the same thing when I lived there. Still same level of crime and punishment. Okay, but I was effective. I had a direct impact on the crime rate there. I did. It was very obvious. But again, that comes down to community policing, consistency, and having your guys go out there. And that goes to this. But that'll be the directly like, oh, I can't do that. I can't even do that. Because it would help the crime getting to know the community and showing a presence. Because when I lived there, it was these guys knew that, again, like a deputy wasn't 2 hours out if they did something. Trent James is 5 minutes away, or 2 minutes, because we see his patrol car parked in his driveway in the middle of town in Covelo. That's why it dropped too. And I also got to know people, and they knew that I was going to, take them to jail if it warranted it. Right. And I was going to, and, but also that I cared and I respected people and all those sorts of things. And a lot of guys had enough respect for me, criminals, that would call me on my cell phone, because everybody in Covelo had my cell phone number. Everybody. I gave that thing out like free candy. I didn't, because I wanted to. And I actually got told not to do that by my lieutenant at the time. That's not a good idea. And I said, I don't give a shit what you say. Because it was easier for me. They got mad because like they didn't want people to call dispatch. They wanted people to call dispatch. They wanted the call logged, right? And they got mad at me when I would give people my number and have them contact me directly. I said, look, man, this is, again, my expertise, not yours. None of the lieutenants there, including, or even the sheriff, have the knowledge and experience that I do out there. Not even Matt Kendall. He does not. Okay. And he's out of touch, and he's affiliated with the much older generation, like the ranchers and stuff like that, mostly nowadays. But it was easier for me to do business and to be efficient. And I realized that very quickly when I gave people my phone number. So everybody had it. But the respect element there in terms of the criminals, and also why it dropped, is a lot of these guys, when they knew that I was looking for them, I wanted to question them, or they had a warrant, they would call my cell phone or text me. Hey, Trent, I heard you were looking for me. Hey, Trent, I know I have a warrant. Where can I meet you to turn myself in? I'm not making that shit up. That is the truth and verifiable. Okay. Like that is what, but that's just, and I'm not special, man. I'm not like trying to act super cool again. Like, it's just a fact of the matter. And any good resident deputy can do that. Anyone that is, has the same drive and personality and willingness to benefit that community and not fall back on excuses. Can you imagine how ineffective I would be if I went to Covelo as a resident deputy and like, I go to town meetings, I go to the schools and whatever else, I talk to people there, and I'm just like, I can't do shit here, man. I'm living here, but I'm just here I don't even know why I'm here. Stuff's decriminalized, and there's the culture thing with Native Americans on the reservation with the drugs and alcohol, and we can't hire bodies. So like, cause I can't get a partner because of that. It's like, so no, that's not going to work. That would maybe horrible. They would have like recalled me out of that valley for sure. So right there, man, that wasn't my mentality going into it. And that's why I was successful. And that's why I did change people's lives. And I did that community did still have problems. I'm not stating that. It's just that I did have an impact there based on those facts, based on my mentality, based on just not making excuses and having solutions to problems. As a cop, you are supposed to create solutions for complex situations and problems on the fly, sometimes life and death situations. This is no different. Also, I'm going to tell everybody another trade secret. So he says you can't take him to jail for a ball of heroin or whatever, just a citation. That's not true. You can still take people to jail for a lot of things, especially if it's a quality of life issue or you need to just get them out of Covelo for a while. I did that multiple times with basic misdemeanors. Okay. And it's not just the DA's office, so decriminalization and the district attorney's office, but also it is the jail. The administration in the jail is also horrific. And this is common knowledge for guys that work at the sheriff's office. They would be unwilling to accept a lot of these guys that we would arrest based on just the charge. That's not a governor issue of Gavin Newsom or decriminalization. No, that's them. It's still a crime per the state. But they're saying like, no, we don't want to potentially overcrowd the jail or whatever. And I can understand that aspect to a certain extent, but that's another issue that Matt Kendall's not going to say. It's the jail does not accept some of these guys because they don't want to, not that they can't, that they don't want to in certain circumstances. So you can still, you contact somebody and he's been a problem for a long time, right? And you don't have enough evidence to get him on anything else, but he's walking on the street. You end up searching him for whatever reason. He has like a small amount of meth, a ball of heroin, right? That's a misdemeanor or get a warrant, a citation, but he's also under the influence because they usually are of that substance. So he's high in public, likely to continue. Guess what? You can, by law, take that guy to county jail. But what would happen is our command staff would say, hey, the jail's getting mad at us. They don't want us to take these certain individuals to jail anymore. Sometimes I'd say, I don't give a fuck. I'm taking this guy to jail. I know based on my personal expert opinion and experience and everything else that this guy is a problem. Not even an opinion, it's a fact. This guy's been a problem and he needs to go. Like even if it's for a day or 2 days, whatever. And they would do that. And a lot, again, even if I take that guy to jail, sometimes they would just automatically cite him out and release him right away. But that's their prerogative. That's up to them. It's not decriminalization. That's them choosing to do that. And it is very, very frustrating. So yeah, decriminalization is a small component of that. Bigger ones too. It's not small. It is a component, but two large ones, the DA's office not prosecuting, the jail personally, those guys turning away people that we can still legally arrest for crimes. So no, Matt Kendall is not telling you the full picture in these things. Again, it's a sleight of hand illusion situation. Yes, you can still take people to county jail for these various offenses. If they have just possession of meth, is it likely to continue if you take it away from them? That's one of the components of a misdemeanor crime. No. So maybe you can't take that person just based on that fact. But again, usually they're under the influence. Likely to continue. Yes, you can take them to jail for that. You absolutely can take them to jail for that. Don't let anybody tell you differently. And again, if they say you can't, it's because the jail said you can't. That's another component of the sheriff's office. A lot of this solutions comes back to dealing with the issues that plague the sheriff's office, which is the people in charge there. And I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of Covelo getting treated like shit. I'm tired of it being looked down upon like it's just nothing. And like cops there too, the older ones, command staff, that's just Covelo. It's just Covelo. Man, and it goes back to like the Khadijah Britton thing. And I didn't mention, I did a video on Khadijah Britton, and this goes into the lack of caring in general on Covelo. I don't give a shit. I'm going to say this. So I did that video on Khadijah Britton, and I worked that case. I was the first person assigned to it. Okay. And I was out there daily looking for her with tribal police. All right. I was around from the beginning until the very end of that. And it's horrible situation. But after I did that video, because there was one thing I didn't have clarification on because it had been so long, I couldn't remember fully. And I said the time it took the detective unit in Mendocino County to mobilize and get out to Covelo. And I was like, I couldn't remember, but I distinctly remember that it took them a while, longer than it should have. I did state in the video that they did everything that they said they did in terms of the warrants, gathering evidence. That is factually true. They did do all of those things. But the urgency to get out there, I talked to two guys after I did this video, and because I was like kind of hazy, I'm like, man, I need to like clarify this. And I didn't want to bring this up too in the video had I had the full clarification prior, because I didn't want to make it all about this. And I wanted it to be Khadijah's story, her, and like murdering and missing Indigenous women on reservations. But Yeah, it took those guys a much longer, the detectives, to get out and investigate that case. And Shannon Barney specifically had, yeah, guy from Covelo had that same mentality. It's a tweaker that's gone missing on the reservation. It's a girl. She'll turn up at some point. She's probably high at a party. I'm not even kidding you. Okay. These are the conversations that would go on. And I distinctly remember, because sometimes you talk about things and like it comes back to you and stuff. And I didn't want to bring some of these things up in that video, but my sergeant at the time, Quincy Cromer, I was standing in his office when this was transpiring in its early stages with Khadijah missing. And he was angry. Quincy was. He said, this is bullshit. Because Quincy had been a detective prior to being a sergeant. He said, if I was still in detectives, my ass would be out there on the ground interviewing people and trying to fucking solve this case. And he's like, they're not doing that shit. That's the fact. It's truth. That is the truth. They can deny that shit all they want and say like Trent's lying and blah, 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 blah. Nope. That is the fact. I got guys right now that I will call that can verify what I'm saying. And that's just how it is, man. And it wasn't necessarily the detective's fault, because guess who those guys were supervised by? Shannon Barney, swinger king of Round Valley. All right. And he can deny that shit too. That's a documented incident in court, but it's like, it goes back to that. And that shit pissed me off also, because I was running around doing all this work because I gave a fuck. And then you have these other people that are like, Mrs. Covelo, she's just a tweaker. She's going to turn up at some point in time. And guess what? She fucking didn't, did she? No. And could that have changed the outcome if they had gone out when they should have? Maybe. I don't know. I can't tell the future, but again, those things got done in terms of the search warrants and stuff like that with her. But the initial response was what it's always going to be in Covelo until you get rid of the ultimate problem, which is the administration there. They got to go. They got to go. I don't know how any way else to say that. That's not just coming from a petty, disgruntled ex-employee. That's not the case. I'm making double the money right now and I have no boss. All right. And I live like better than I did there. So I'm not mad that I don't work for the sheriff's office there anymore. Right. It's not the case. I'm just trying to enlighten people and tell them the truth that no one else is going to talk about. Cause I give a fuck about that community. I give a fuck about that county. And there's a lot of great people in it. And it's very angry. It makes me irritated and angry to see the lies and nothing getting done. It's just a revolving door of bullshit and illusion and, sleight of hand. And it's just like, it's truly sad to see that a lot of these things could be avoided or solved or dealt with properly, and they're not. And I'm going to say it. People could believe me or not believe me, but at the end of the day, I know what I'm saying is factual and the truth, and it is what it is. Actually, I can go into Matt Kendall and Rosento on this, right? So Matt Kendall states that the lion's share of the calls come from Covelo. That's not true. That is not true. I know it's statistically not true. Those are in the Willits Brook Trails area and Laytonville and those sorts of places. Covelo does not have a high call volume. It does not, unless something has completely, I worked that place for years and it was very consistent yearly. What they do have is egregious hardcore crimes that can occur, but those are not every single day. Okay. There's crime that occurs everywhere in the county every day of the week. Okay. But for us in the North sector, no, there was sometimes we'd go like 5 days, 6 days, with 0 calls in Covelo. Right. And, obviously I haven't been at the sheriff's office since, 2021, but again, there's no way that that's factually or statistically accurate. And if I'm wrong, I will happily admit that I'm wrong, but I would like to see the call logs to prove that through dispatch, because it's all logged. Okay. But I don't believe that's the case.
So your experience, your contention is that, what I've heard you saying all around this issue is something relating to Rosento Cordova's comment that nobody, they may have people coming out here for service calls, but they leave immediately after. They're not here before, and nobody cares. So I'm divining here from your response that you feel a big part of the. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it seems as though you're saying a large part of the caring got communicated by the fact that a person, you were there on site, you lived there, they saw you around, they knew you were in the community, and that in itself diffuses a lot of the tension and just puts people more at ease. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And
so why is it? So if we know that, you saw it, Rosento Cordova knows it. I'm imagining Matt Kendall, that they have that presence. The sheriffs have it in Ukiah, don't they? Don't they have that calming? Don't they have men that live there on site? Don't they have sheriff's cars parked in the streets there at night that they see? Don't the privileged white areas have that presence of command staff people and sheriff's deputies living among and around them? But they're not in Covelo, are they?
No, you're absolutely correct. And what I saw for people that I worked with, and this was also at a command staff level too, that they would prioritize the corridor. And when I worked there, and by the corridor, I'm meaning for people that worked in the north sector, which is Willits north to the Humboldt County line, Leggett, Laytonville, Piercy, etc. It would get prioritized over Covelo. So back before I moved to Covelo, when I was just assigned to Covelo, when I was going in there every day on my shifts, I got told by my lieutenant, I'm going to say, okay, after morning briefing, all right, see you later. Me as Trent, I'm going to Covelo. That's my area. No, you're not, Trent. And why not? Why not? And I'll ask my sergeant and my lieutenant, what do you mean I'm assigned there? I chose that shift when we pick shifts, to be assigned to Covelo. This is what I want. This is the area that needs my attention, man. Like this, it's a lot of crazy stuff happens out there and they need a presence. No, we cannot leave quotes. We cannot leave the corridor unmanned. And the corridor is that the Willits area to Laytonville. And you want to know why? Even those people that I worked for would see Covelo as less than the other areas. And my argument to my actual sergeant that I did I was like, how is Covelo any different than any of these other places? I would tell my sergeant in a one-on-one after, that got said, I said, this doesn't make any sense to me. I said, Covelo is still a town in Mendocino County. It still has human beings in it and it needs our attention. And I said, the lieutenant specifically is basically stating that Willits is more important and has more important people in it. So does Laytonville. And he actually said he agreed with me. He said, Trent, I agree with you, but guess what? We're following orders and this is what we have to do. So and basically what it was even back then, it's always been two of us. It was always two of us. The sheriff's office has been short staffed for decades. Okay. This is nothing new. And it's not it goes in waves. Okay. You hire some dudes, some guys, and you're cool for 6 months to a year. And then, people transfer out, people quit, people get injured, whatever. This is nothing new. This is not revolutionary. Okay. The times have changed to a certain extent, in regards to things that have happened in the media with law enforcement and, decriminalization. There are some additional factors that I can touch on, and when my lieutenant wasn't working, which was awesome, I would go straight to Covelo because he wasn't around to tell me what to do. And guess what? My partner, because we were always short staffed, again, this is nothing new, he would remain in the Willits area. And he didn't, that was our agreement. I said, man, let me go take care of Covelo and I want to be out there. And always 100% of the time, my partners were cool with that. And I'll get into this later because they didn't want to go to Covelo. And that's still prevalent today. But, so they would work the Willits area north. But the thing about those areas in the corridor that Covelo does not have is more often than not, you're going to have backup more readily accessible to you than Covelo for sure. So if my partner was going to a 2 or 3 man call, he would be able to contact California Highway Patrol, Fish and Game, or state parks in some cases. And more often than not, those guys would be somewhere in the general area or Willits PD, if it's down in the Willits area in the county, to go and back them up. Right. So the backup issue was non-existent for us that worked in the corridor. Okay. And we're deputies. It got beaten into our heads that you're a deputy in Mendocino County, which is a rural area. You're going to work by yourself. And that's just, you had to handle yourself a certain way and be comfortable with that fact. But for me, in Covelo, it's not the case. You don't have any backup. It's an hour away pretty much regardless, unless Fish and Game happens to be out there in the woods doing something. So, but with that being said, Covelo was completely deprioritized all those years that I worked there. This is still the case today. And what goes on behind closed doors that the public does not see is that fact alone. And I'm going to say this right now, and it's, people are going to challenge this that currently are in the administration at the sheriff's office more than likely, because that's going to be their job. is to put out this potential fire that I'm saying, but it is the truth. And anybody that worked with me there knows for a fact it's the truth. Rosento knows it's the truth. And a lot of those tribal police guys do too. It was not looked at the same. But what would happen is, I'm gonna get into this too, and this goes to the corridor thing that I just said about it being a priority where Covelo is not. There would be something that would pop off. For example, a murder, or we would have town meetings out there, and the public would relay their concerns about what's going on. Hey, this has been a huge problem for us. We're not getting any assistance. We're not getting any presence. And again, this is a tale as old as time. That community has been saying this for years because it's true. They do not get the attention that they need, right? So what would happen is something horrible would happen, and then the deputies at the sheriff's office, Fish and Game, and CHP would go out there and do maximum enforcement. That was what was ordered. You guys are to go do maximum enforcement for 2 weeks. Usually it was a 2-week time frame, 1 to 2 weeks, and arrest everybody for everything. Pull over every car for everything. Give a ticket for anything that you can. Tow every single vehicle. That was more like a CHP function. But for us, it was no breaks for anybody, right? And I did not abide by this at all. Usually I was like, I just went and hid out in the hill or something, because I was like, I'm not, because what you do when you do that, there's a couple different things. So, and I'm addressing this from what I saw and what's the truth, because the communities, not everyone in the community is going to know this fact or understand this, but so that would piss people off, rightfully so, because the guys that would go out there and do this maximum enforcement, they can't differentiate between who is a quality of life issue in terms of the criminal element and who is a normal Joe citizen that is going to teach history at the high school, right? Not that anybody is above the law, but what they would do is, enforce everything to, there would be no spirit of the law anymore. It was letter of the law, black and white. There is no wiggle room. But in Covelo, again, nobody is above the law, but you have to police that place differently. You do.
When you come in that way, hard and high with guys that don't know what they're doing, there's no ability to differentiate threats. You're coming in and you're looking at every offender as the same equal. They're not, though. And nobody they don't do that in Ukiah or the well-policed white areas, because they already know, oh, that guy's a joke. We don't need to worry about him. They know because they're there. They're there. And if you sent guys from the tribal police, it seems to me, Trent, over to Ukiah to start raising Cain and kicking shit out of people, let's go and kick the shit out of people in Ukiah for a bit and raise their tent a little bit. You get a bunch of tribal guys. What would they know? They don't know who's the real threat offenders, right?
Yeah, and let me finish this thought here. So exactly, you're right. And the other thing, though, is aside from not being able to distinguish between the good guys and the quote unquote good guys and quote unquote bad guys, is the guys that are creating those issues, okay, the quality of life issues. When you have maximum enforcement, they're going into hiding, man. They're not coming and driving around town in broad daylight. And, when all these 30 cops are in town for 2 weeks, they're not doing that. And they know the game, because this is a consistent thing. It's very predictable on the law enforcement side. And these dudes would tell me this too. And I could see it. It's common sense, right? So they say, yeah, this horrible thing happened. We know these cops are going to come in here for 2 weeks, but then they're going to leave and never come back. And guess what? They are right. So not only does it, go in and hammer them, and that would be the common terminology that the command staff would use, hammer them, right? Meaning hammer the people and stuff. And they don't say like, hey, just take it easy on people that are just regular citizens. They don't say that. They say everybody. It is maximum enforcement means maximum enforcement with no breaks of any kind, right? So not only does that create a whole slew of problems for, getting people into trouble and towing cars and stuff when you shouldn't be doing that for some of these individuals, but you're not getting to know anybody there. Okay. You're not getting to know anybody on a personal level. And this goes back to the community policing argument that I gave before. This is what is beneficial, a community policing standpoint. And yes, there is a good element in that in terms of arresting people and enforcing the law and enforcing crime, but you have to do it appropriately and when it's applicable and when it makes sense. And you have to do it consistently. So when we would do these 2-week things, right? And again, I tried everything in my power to not be involved in it most of the time. And I wouldn't do it. Right. But my lieutenant at the time, Andrew Porter, I told him this verbatim in front of witnesses also. And I said, Lieutenant Porter, I have experience that you don't. Okay, even though he liked to think that he knows everything about everything. He never worked in Covelo. He went out there a couple times as a detective, but doesn't know the people or the community. And I said, because this is when I started to get a lot of complaints from members of the community too, when they were doing this maximum enforcement. And I said, Lieutenant, you are making people infuriated. I was like, you're actually making my job harder because I'm having to put out all these fires too and make excuses for you guys, which I didn't even do. I said, I would tell people to stay home. I did. I said, don't come out. These guys are coming in. You know what I mean? And to the ones that I knew that would get harassed, right? And this is what he told me. Again, this is in front of other people. He said, Trent, it's called optics. Quote, optics, end quote, right? Meaning it is an illusion. Meaning that when these things happen, they are going to give the impression that they care because, quote unquote, Matt Kendall's from Covelo, which I've heard 18 million times, like that somehow means that he cares about the community automatically. But he would say it's optics, Trent. It's going to think that, you have an immediate reaction. That's why Rosento said this. It's like, well, the immediate response has been good. Yeah, it is, because it always will be. Because then you can't come back at the sheriff and say, you didn't even do anything. We came to you with these complaints and you completely ignored it. No. I sent you 30 guys, right away. So that they don't have that to go against him now. All right. But the optics thing, yeah, so that's visually, and that's what you see in your head, right? And then by the time they do this maximum enforcement and piss so many people off, the community is actually happy that they're leaving. So there's not really an overall, general overwhelming complaint after the 2-week time of hammering the whole town that like, oh, we wish these guys would stay longer and get to know us as people, right? That's not going to happen. That's not going to be the case. In terms of the Rosento stating that they can tell the difference, and like I said, I wholeheartedly agree with that, is the fact that you can't make somebody, so you can't force somebody per policy, to live in any area of the county. You cannot say you have to live in Boonville, you have to live in, Gualala, you have to live in Covelo as a resident deputy. They can't do that. What they can do is force you to work a certain area. You can live wherever you want, Trent, but you have to work Covelo. Even though that was never the case, I volunteered all 5 years for that position because I liked it. But so that can be problematic. But the thing is that you can't, when you're forcing somebody to go work a certain area, and you have to do it because nobody was picking the Covelo shifts. Okay. It was me and one of my other friends. And he kind of picked it for a different reason. But when you're doing that, Rosento stating again that like we feel the difference. It's like you can't force somebody to care about a community like that, like to the extent that they need that done, right? And law enforcement officers, they should be, caring, empathetic individuals and try to be understanding for everybody in all walks of life, right? And unbiased and impartial and treat everybody with respect and everything like that goes into that. But Covelo is so unique. I've used that term before, but it is that it requires extra. And like I said, when I was assigned to that place, but I lived in Ukiah and I was still going out there 10, 12 hours a day on all my days that I worked. And sometimes I would volunteer. I would ask my sergeant at the time, hey, I'm on my day off in Ukiah. I have nothing to do. Can I come work an overtime shift in Covelo? I have some follow-up investigation I need to do, or I just want to go to the school. Or the principal contacted me and said, hey, Trent, next time you're in town, can you come talk to me about something? Yeah, sure, Mark. I'm not doing anything today. Let me see if I can come in, and then I'd go out there and talk to him, and that's what that takes. Okay.
Would they approve it?
What?
Would they approve your request to go out?
Yeah, usually. The only time that they wouldn't is if they were, there was some financial issue or, I made the lieutenant mad or, because that place is pretty immature, the command staff is. But usually they would. And I would be able to go out there and, make a presence because what happened was, and this is another good point too, in terms of why they need more of a community-based law enforcement officer. Tom Allman, when he told me it was a business decision for him to allow me to live there. But after a period of time, he said, Trent, even my lieutenant at the time said this too. He's like, my phone doesn't ring anymore, Trent. Nobody's calling me and saying like things aren't getting done, or they wish they had more attention or anything negative to that effect. And he said, it's because, not that I'm anything special at all. Okay. There's other guys that have done this before me. I'm not trying to talk myself up at all. I'm just saying this is a fact for any guy that has been a resident deputy out there and cares, like Jason Cox, for example, another good one. But they would, or Hank Stolfi. So that was true. And that's proven right there. So they're not, you have to have that presence. And again, it's proven in the drop in crime when I worked there and lived there. It's proven by the sheriff and lieutenant no longer getting these calls. And when you're out there and you're doing, it's a lot of work though, man. Like when I did it, it was 7 days a week. I had no days off. Everybody had my cell phone number in the community, even guys that I was arresting. And I made myself very, very accessible. Now that can be very mentally taxing for sure when you do it alone for a long period of time like I did. And, I'm going to get into my solution to that here in a second, but I do want to bring up, I just covered like they can tell the difference. And yeah, the guys that I did work with too, I don't know one guy that is, not that they're bad people for this or bad cops, but I don't know one guy that I ever worked with at the sheriff's office that wants to go live there for one. Most of these guys are married, have kids and houses and stuff like that. But or even if they work there as a shift, that would take it to the extent that I did, or Jason Cox did, or, any of these other good ones that have been out there, which has been few and far between, unfortunately. Most of them have been bad. But it's like, you have to have, it's just a certain person that you need to get to, that needs to be out there, and anybody that's lived in Covelo for years on end, or that I've talked to, have told me that themselves, and they'll vouch for what I'm saying, and they can understand, because it's the truth, that it takes a certain type of people, they've said that too in the complaints. And this is how I base a lot of, what I'm saying on a lot of what the community has told me over these years. It's not just my opinion. I'm talking on behalf of a lot of people there too. That they don't want the RoboCop. They don't want the guy that's going to go in there and hammer them for 2 weeks for every little thing. That's not effective. That's not you shouldn't be a cop if you're going to do that kind of stuff. Okay. That is not what being in law enforcement is about. And that is an aspect of it. Okay. But to get people to care and want to show up, and that's going to be negatively affected, right? So if you have a guy that's forced to even work out there, he doesn't want to be there, because none of the guys that I worked with wanted to, like doing the stuff that I did, going to the schools, the businesses. I love that stuff. That takes a certain type of individual though. But when you don't want to be there, that energy is felt, and it's seen in your face. It's seen in your mannerisms. And guess what? Those guys that are forced to go out there, they're not doing the community-based stuff. They're still going to do I'm looking for the guys with the warrants. I'm going to go do some quote unquote cop shit and, whatever. And that's still what's getting done. Right. But in terms of
Mr. Cordova told me there's just been a few that have ever wanted to be there. So, and we agree though, that people need to be out there. That is a solution, or a part of the solution is to get much more calming, regular, everyday presence and patrol, and the calming influence of law people in the community. But the challenges are, as Sheriff Kendall told me, Trent, he said, we are well paid already, Andrew. I am well paid personally, and my deputies are. It's not a question of that, but I can't compete with $75,000 bounties being paid by Alameda and people that would rather work in Healdsburg than Covelo. So Trent James, what is your, solution to these problems in Covelo, if you have one, or what is your response to the solutions put forward by Sheriff Kendall, who defeated you in the election?
Right. Yeah. And I've already addressed a couple of these excuses, right? Like blaming the culture and the decriminalization of crimes. Like I said, with the decriminalization, it is a factor, but I didn't have a problem. That wasn't like an overwhelming issue, just because stuff got decriminalized where I still wasn't able to be effective at my job. So it's not really a solution. It's just a matter of fact. Like that is just a weak excuse and nothing more, or blaming a culture. It can have like I said, factors involved in that, but again, it's not whatever. But to address the staffing issue, and I've said this already during this interview, it's plagued that department for years. That Mendocino County is a rural community, and they would get a lot of applicants from outside of the area, right? And they would use Mendocino County as a stepping stone, meaning they would get a year or two under their belt, get their post certification, get off probation, and then transfer to where they're from, Sonoma County, the Bay Area, whatever. Okay. That's nothing new. That's been going on since the last 40 years. Okay. That's not like revolutionary. Like, oh, this is just happening right now. I don't know what to do. That's not the accurate, right? Yeah. Like, oh, this is just applicable to 2021, 22, and 23. No, that's not the case. Even like I said, when I got hired, it was still, it's common. Okay. It's been happening forever. So,
Sheriff Kendall specifically cited that. He said, even if so many different issues that are stair-step there, the fact that you can't get qualified people to even apply. But when they do apply, they get backgrounded out, or the ones that they actually hire transfer out after a year to go back to Healdsburg.
Okay. So, and like I said, that's nothing new. Okay. And so my direct question to that response is, I'm going to give a solution, in my opinion, kind of a solution here. There's no perfect solution to this stuff, by the way. And there's different opinions based on experiences and what's going on and all these sorts of things. And again, I haven't been in the Valley in Covelo for a couple of years now. So like, mainly. But when it comes to that, and it's been forever, right? And again, we were short-staffed when I worked there. So how is it that I can dedicate pretty much most of my shifts to Covelo, going out there and working it when it's
how was that?
Well, no, exactly. When it's me and one other guy, that's it. So the staffing levels haven't changed. It's still 2 deputies. If I don't even know, because I don't really talk to anybody there anymore, but more than likely it's still 2 deputies in the North Sector, a shift and a sergeant. So why can't a sergeant and a deputy maintain the all-important corridor while another dude goes to Covelo daily? Why can't you do that? I did it for years. What's the problem? So you can't blame the staffing issue, because there is always a way to do that. And if stuff's popping off, like people are getting, ran over and shot in the corridor, then you're going to come out of Covelo and you're going to assist. But if nothing egregious is happening and your sergeant and the deputy can handle it, or the deputy by himself with backup from those other agencies, then you stay in Covelo. And that's what I did. That was my conversation I had with my partner. Most of the time we went unsupervised. So we just made that decision. I said, I'm going to go to Covelo. You good with that? Yep. And then they would maintain the corridor by themselves and seek backup as necessary. So staffing is always low. It's always been low in every area of the county. And I don't understand why that's even still an excuse why you can't at least have a presence. Okay. It might not be the same.
Your assertion is that Sheriff Kendall could assign people. He says he doesn't have the boots to put out there or to put anywhere adequately. Your assertion is he could assign somebody there.
Well, so yeah, okay. Let me clarify that, okay? Because this is his way around it, right? So, and he's true in some regard to this. This is what would happen. So, for example, like I just said, if you're assigned to Covelo, like I was, but you're short-staffed, like the sheriff's office has been since the 1850s, it's nothing new. Okay, again, I want to preface that. It's not a new phenomenon here in terms of staffing in Mendocino County. You're going to come out of Covelo, okay? If something crazy is going on in Leggett, or Laytonville, you're going to go back up your one other partner because you have to for safety issues or the workload or whatever the case is. But then again, I was still able to do it, and people got to know me very well with that exact same staffing level. Very easily. Okay. Yeah. Some days, like I was assigned to Covelo and I wasn't able to go out there. They say, Trent, you can't go to Covelo today. We have this crazy case or warrant that we have to do in Piercy. We need you to back us up. Cool. But guess what? Then the next 2 days, 3 days straight, I'm in Covelo and I'm going around to the schools and the businesses and stuff. Like, so you make it work, I guess is my point. Okay. But the other thing in terms of the staffing and why, guys are, so the bonus, the hiring bonus, that is relatively new. Okay, within the last few years, where most agencies are starting to implement these hiring bonuses, because there is certain truth to the fact that a lot of people do not want to be in law enforcement anymore for a whole host of reasons. Okay, the general hatred in the media, labeling all cops as racist, the ACAB movement, and these sorts of things, the decriminalization, where a lot of cops are like, I can't even do my job anymore, why bother? So that some of those things do play a part in overall getting people to apply, right? But that's not just a Mendocino County. Every single agency faces that, right? So I go back and forth between California and Texas currently, okay? I'm outside the Houston area. I've talked to guys that work at police departments out here in Texas, and you got to remember, a lot of people are coming to Texas from California and New York and a lot of states, and Weed is still a felony here, okay? They just recently, within the last month, made it so personal use of marijuana is a misdemeanor. Everything else, still a felony, okay? And guess what? You can still do your job out here for the most part. You can still enforce laws. They are still prosecuting crimes. And guess what? They're still short-staffed out here too, okay? So it is plaguing the entire nation for a whole host of different reasons. And that is a case, okay? So that's not Mendocino County exclusive, okay? Mendocino County, the sheriff's office doesn't get to use that excuse at all, saying like, oh, well, you know, it's Mendocino County. It's like, no, okay, so the staffing issue, firstly, can be caused by just in general, not as many, okay? But there are still people that do. Now, in terms of, I can't compete with hiring bonuses at whatever, okay? Again, that is not exclusive to Mendocino County. So you're saying that like Napa County, for example, can't offer the same hiring bonus as Alameda County or a different county. They're going to say, oh, well, we're losing guys to that county because they offer more money. No, you could do that till the end of time all over the state about other people that offer more money than other people. Okay, there's a lot of factors that go into that. Okay, just because somebody offers more money, and this is speaking from personal experience and guys that I went to the academy with and other guys that I knew in law enforcement, just because a place offers more money doesn't mean that you're going to want to work at that agency, okay? There are certain things that attract people to certain agencies based on how quick can I promote? How quick can I get into specialty assignments, canine units, SWAT, detectives, task force, etc. What's the area like? How close is it to the ocean? How close is it to the snow? You know, so there's a lot of contributing factors to that. Like me, for example, back then, if someone said like, Trent, do you want to, you know, Sonoma County is going to offer you, or not even Sonoma County, just any county, they're going to offer you, you know, 15 grand more, but you want to work in Covelo and they're going to pay you 15 grand less, but you love that area, you want to work there. I'm not going to take that extra bonus because more than likely I'm not going to be happy at whatever that agency is, right? So money can be a contributing factor to some where they see just the dollar sign. This agency is offering more, so I'm definitely going to do it. But it's like, where are these people from? Or where are their families? And again, a lot of people would transfer out of Mendocino County because, well, okay, the horrible administration, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the main reasons why retention is non-existent at the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office and why guys, not just recently, but for a long time, have transferred to other agencies like Sonoma County and like Napa County. How do I know this? Because I have a lot of guys that I worked with that I was friends with that did so based on good cops, based on the fact that the administration would treat us like garbage. Okay, so that is another factor why you're not just unable to hire, okay, but unable to maintain what you have. That should be a main focus, okay? And this is another problem because I still do talk to a couple of people there that work at the sheriff's office. They're not, the people that they do retain, they still treat them like they're second-class citizens, okay? And they don't make sure that they retain these people. They don't show that they're worth anything. They're still putting them in internal affairs investigations that they don't deserve to be put in. There's a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of bad leadership still. And so those play a factor. So you're losing guys, you're not only not getting guys, but you're losing guys too. So the main solution is get rid of everybody that works there in the administrative level and have the current sergeants that are all good guys promote to their level, get a new sheriff in there. And that's the main reason why I went to run for sheriff, because I knew that, and I was talking on behalf of most of the guys that I worked with that were tired of it. Just nobody else would speak up about it. It's like, if you have horrible leadership, and this is not just at the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, that issue plagues most departments in the country. It's really incredible. It's really weird, but it happens. It's just because of the type of people that get promoted and the reason why they get promoted. But another solution, aside from we're trying to retain your guys, is don't be a shitty leader, okay? Which they all are. And, that makes for a horrible workplace. You got to remember, this is a hard job. Very stressful, very mentally, physically draining. And when you put bad leadership or a bad boss on top of that, it is horrible. It's not just like a regular job where you have a bad boss, okay? It's all these other things on top of that. Now, in terms of like hiring bonuses, blah, 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 the other solution that Matt Kendall or the sheriff's office can do, instead of making just blanket excuses with, no solutions in sight, is to actually market themselves, actually recruit. I know for an absolute fact, they are not doing that. They have one guy in charge of it. He runs professional standards, which is the background unit, which is ironic to me because he used to work in the jail, but he illegally tased 2 people. Now they put him in this unit. But my point is, you have one guy that's not a cop that is in charge of recruitment, but they don't do it. They don't recruit anybody. They did for a very short period of time where they would go to academies here and there. There was 2 deputies, 2 sergeants that would do it. I've done it before back in the day. I also had a lot of ideas back then, how to market the sheriff's office properly and get them to, get us more guys. But I relayed that to the captain there. They didn't listen to me. They don't listen to ideas because that's just how they are. Another reason why you get rid of what's there. No criticism. They can't listen to new, fresh ideas. So another solution when you can't get guys. So instead of saying like, I just can't compete, I can't compete. So instead of giving up and having that defeatist attitude, why don't you think of like, okay, this is the problem I'm facing. What are ways that I can not just sit here and pout and make an excuse to the community, but what are ways that I can solve this problem?
Got that overlay, Trent, established that you think, or you suggest they're not doing a good job. Their failure as administrators leads to all these other failures. But so that's one solution, is to just get rid of those people and replace them. But that didn't work. With respect, sir, you lost the election and
Yes.
he won. And
Yes,
we
he did.
got him. So help me out here. What can you tell Rosento Cordova, your friend and comrade in arms, and what can you tell the people out there that are on the ground suffering at the hands of these depraved criminals, and yet because I'm trying to advance answers to my readers who are asking, what is going on? Why aren't they reacting? What's going to happen differently? So tell me, Trent, where do we go aside from Kendall standing down and you getting in the job? What can we do, or he do, or they do? What can actually happen to change things now?
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, at the time that I did run for sheriff, that was my goal, because I saw that based on the general outcry of people in the public and also guys that I worked with, that they were desperate for the change that was going to lead to some of these things. So so in terms of solutions, I've kind of debunked a lot of this stuff, there's no solution to, so this is a complicated issue. Okay. And there's a lot of nuances.
Just rephrase. What could Matt Kendall do right now with this? So like he says, I can't hire people, can't compete. Can you address that issue? How can you get people on board?
Yeah, no, and I was getting into that toward the end of my thing here. So, but I'm just trying to go down the list and address everything that he said. So in terms of like, he has short staffing. Okay. I proved my point already. I was still going out there when they're short staffed. You can still have a guy go out there and be present. Okay. That's a solution. Don't make an excuse. Just have a dude go out there when there's nothing else going on and try to do that.
You can order a man out there. You can order him to go out.
It's not that hard. And he might be doing that right this second, but from people that I still talk to in the community, that's not happening. Okay. Like, I still talk to people there. So I don't know. And again, I'm not there. I could have this wrong. And if I am wrong about any of this, I will happily, I'm not wrong about stuff that I saw though, for sure. But anything else that has happened since I have not been there. Right now, I'm basing some of these things off of what the community that I still do talk to, the people that I still do talk to out there that are telling me. Okay. But so in terms of addressing the short staffing issue, you can still send a guy out there. Okay. That's a solution. Boom. Okay. And you might not be able to do it every day, but you can try to do it. Okay. And then, because again, I did it. Don't use culture and no jobs and alcoholism as an excuse, man. And at the end of the day, that's like a tribal issue that they need to also, Rosento says this too, improvement on all sides, right? So that's something that you can work with them. A community-based officer can work with them and try to help them with whatever they need in terms of like those sorts of things, right? But in terms of the hiring people and getting people on, okay, like I said, he is not marketing at all. He has one guy in charge. So easy solution to that. And he says it himself, we're well paid. It's true. Even when I left a couple of years ago, I was making really good money for somebody that lives in Mendocino County. And it's not an excuse. He's just saying that right there. The money's not the factor. Okay. But then again, he contradicts himself by saying we get paid really well, but I can't compete with the bonuses. Okay. So what Mendocino County has going for it that a lot of other agencies, especially Sonoma County and bigger departments and stuff, is the experience that you get, okay, and you can get into a lot of these specialty assignments like SWAT, K-9 unit, field training officer, detectives within a couple years. Whereas other agencies, you got to wait like a decade. You are on a long, long list of guys. So your career might be fully extended in terms of you getting to enjoy yourself and get to participate in these various specialty units because you took 10 grand more to go work at Sonoma County, right? But if you would have just taken a little bit of cut on the bonus and worked in Mendocino County, you're still making a shitload of money hourly for the cost of living there. But now you wanted to be a canine, that's your main goal. Guess what, dude? In a year and a half, you probably get a dog, okay? Or you can be SWAT or whatever. So that is a huge, huge benefit and pro that a lot of other agencies can't offer. So you have a good hourly wage in Mendocino County. You can live comfortably there, okay? And get into specialty units. Sonoma County, everyone says this too, and this has been the case for every cop job, firefighter job, everything. Sonoma County is always going to make more hourly, no matter what you're doing there. Sheriff's office, PDs, whatever. But the cost of living is like double, okay? So when you think about the hourly you make and the cost of living in Sonoma County, and I lived in Santa Rosa for 8 years, okay? It's a wash because you're going to Mendocino County. Yep. You're going to make less hourly, but guess what? The cost of living is generally less depending on, what you got going on. So it's like, it's really not that much of a difference, but marketing is a huge thing. Okay. They're not allocating any resources to push that hard. Another thing with the staffing issue and hiring people, aside from the marketing aspect and recruiting, this actually directly ties into the recruiting. Another solution is there is a lot of local interest in becoming a cop in Mendocino County. And I know this for a fact because just like Matt Kendall says, I'm from Covelo. Well, guess what, guys? I'm from Ukiah. Like that somehow fucking means anything, right? But I grew up there, I'm from there, and it's actually applicable in this case just because I know a lot of people there. But because of that fact, they would reach out to me, especially when I was campaigning for sheriff, and message me and say, hey, Trent, if you win the sheriff position, I'm going to apply. I want to work on the street. I had some guys that hit me up that said they wanted to work in the jail and stuff like that. But then, people are going to hit me with, well, Trent, how do we know those people are qualified? They are qualified. Trust me. These are good, solid, honest individuals that I've known for a long period of time. Some of them I actually didn't know. One guy was actually a prior cop in another agency. He chose voluntarily to leave to relocate with his family to Mendocino County from the southern part of the state. And he told me like, hey man, I like what you're doing. I like what you're saying. I got out of it for, I think it was like bad administration or something like that. And he's like, I would like to work for somebody like you. Again, these are people that live in Mendocino County, guys that I know would pass a background check, right? I can't see the future, like every little thing in their history. But again, these are more applicants. All right. And I had people tell me that, they, especially since I started doing YouTube and these videos like that, they didn't, even before that, they saw what was there because Mendocino County is a small town. So a lot of them knew the histories and the rumors and stuff that are true rumors about these guys that work at the sheriff's office. They've also heard that it was a horrible place to work based on like people that they knew that worked there or whatever, just stuff that they heard. And they'd never wanted to be in law enforcement, but they didn't want to apply and work for those types of individuals. So they told me that. And even after the fact, I lost the campaign, of course. And they said that if you ever run again and you win, I'm still going to apply. And so you have local interest there. You do. And Mendocino County in general, not just Covelo, is not rampant with jobs that pay $50 plus an hour like the sheriff's office does. Those are few and far between in Mendocino County. That is a very well-paying job. And a lot of people in Mendocino County, like they grow up there and they stay there forever. I was one of those guys. I moved away for a while, but I came back and I had planned to stay there forever and retire had I not had such a bad experience with these people that worked at the sheriff's office. That being said, you can't use that as an excuse to, I'm losing guys to Sonoma County or other parts of the state because they want to go back and live there because I hired them they're from the Bay Area. They're from LA. It's like, well, guess what? You hired a guy in Ukiah. More than likely, he's going to want to stay there. He's making a good living. He's comfortable. But then again, it goes to the being able to retain these people, your retention, and not treating them like shit. Because then, they're going to want to go to Sonoma County. So, and there's other things that in terms of recruitment for local people as well that you can do, going to local events, going to career fairs at high schools and stuff, people that are going to graduate, have them go into, the jails early on and then go on to patrol later. I did that. I went to the high school and stuff and did career day and all those things when I was in Covelo. and or just anything else in the county that's local. Just have your guys go out that aren't recruiting, or that you just send to academies only, certain academies. Like, oh yeah, no, Trent, actually Trent James is incorrect on this fact, because we sent one of the sergeants last month to Santa Rosa Police Academy, or a police academy in Southern California. That's not doing shit, man. Okay, again, consistency. Do that once a month or every other month. No, do that throughout the month in every regard. On the internet, create flyers, send them out to get on Facebook with your little sheriff's Facebook page, man, and hit a lot of the communities where you know that cops are purposely leaving. Like I've said, like one of my ideas at the time when there was a huge exodus of cops from Seattle, I said we need to poach some of these guys. And because of the laws were not as bad in California that they were there, and the administration was even worse there. There's a lot of reasons, but they don't listen to me. They said, yeah, that's cool, Trent. Yeah, your idea, whatever. It didn't come from us, and we know we're smarter than you, and we know best. So no. And I'm being kind of a smartass a little bit, but honestly, that is pretty much the mentality there. So again, there is a lot of local interest, a lot. Do not let them tell you that there isn't. There is. I can provide messages that I still have from guys, blur their names out, of course, and prior law enforcement too, that would happily apply. So yeah, so like if I was to get and I'm not advocating, this isn't a sheriff campaign for me, man. I'm just trying to give reasons or solutions to these problems, because I have some sort of intelligence level and common sense that the sheriff and administration does not. And it's like I think that these are the things that can be done if I was in that position, or that Matt Kendall can do himself. Okay, this is also like solutions that he can use, so that way he doesn't look as stupid when he goes to these meetings and keeps just complaining about the same thing over and over and over. I guarantee you, he's going to go to another meeting in Covelo in 6 months. Yeah, well, we can't do anything. Crimes down, or decriminalization, and the culture, and also we can't hire guys. I can't compete with the bonuses. Like, nobody wants to work in Mendocino County. Blah blah blah. Nope. None of those things are, again, if you're looking at it from a citizen standpoint, that's part of the reason I wanted to touch on a lot of these things, because they don't know any better. And it's nothing against citizens in Mendocino County. They just don't, unless you have that experience like I do and saw it from the other side of the wall as a cop that worked for this department. You're not going to know the difference, and you're not going to be able to challenge Matt Kendall or any of his guys on any of these points, but I can. And this is all the truth. I tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. So if you're, people are going to get angry and have selective hearing, with what I say per usual, there's probably going to be some typical article that gets written about me by a certain individual who shouldn't have the legal authority to write in that county, that's going to pick apart little things that I said and put it in such a way to where it twists my words and everything that I'm saying. But the smart, intelligent people out there, which there are a lot of in Mendocino County with common sense, are going to see they're going to know what I'm saying is the truth, especially guys that still work for these agencies. So this is free advice for the sheriff's office, man. Use this stuff. Use these solutions, going forward to your little meetings, and have a plan, and maybe it'll get you guys somewhere and in better favor with the community, and you can actually make a change.
Let me jump in there with a pointed question about hiring and retention. So you ran against Kendall. Is it your assertion that because it's very hard to argue the point he makes that, it's kind of a multi, problem situation where they can't get qualified people to apply because they can't pass the background.
Right.
Those that do want to apply get siphoned off by other agencies for more money, et cetera, et cetera. But are you suggesting, do you believe or suggest, if you were sheriff, if you had won or won tomorrow, you were in that job, do you believe you could hire people effectively right up to snuff immediately by different tactics and the kind of culture you would represent?
Yes.
You'd be able to fully staff at the current funding budget levels. You could get people or a competent person. Is that your comment? Is that he, because of who he is and what he represents, cannot do it because he just can't?
Well, first of all, I would actually consistently make the attempt to market my agency. For example, if I was the sheriff there, okay, and he's not doing that. it's really hard to generate interest in your department when all you're going to do is make excuses and say like, oh, I just can't compete with the bonuses. But I know for a fact, there is no disputing this. I don't care what they try to lie about in rebuttal. There are currently no dudes, and they haven't for a while, going out to various academies, going to varying communities outside of Mendocino County and trying to generate interest. And like I said, Mendocino County does have a lot of good things going for it. And it has a lot of things that cops have a general personality type. They like to hunt. They like to fish. Yeah. They like to go out in the woods and do,
they like to be liked. This is a place people like cops.
Yeah. So, but most of law enforcement guys that I know, like, those are their interests on their off duty. Mendocino has that shit everywhere. You make a good hourly wage. You can live very comfortably. You have access to specialty assignments very quickly, and you're still getting a huge hiring bonus, man. I think they still offer like 20 grand. So if you would just market yourself properly, which what I would do, and they're going to say they've been to the academy a handful of times probably, and they're going to say that they've done more, but they haven't. And like I said, I was a part of that process at one point in time, and I had other ideas that, again, they did not listen to regarding that could have benefited them. But it's like they just like to do the bare minimum, saying, I can't say the future. I'm not going to say yes for a fact, Andrew. I can go hire 37 new deputies the second I get sworn in as sheriff. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that what I would do is something, which nothing is going to do. So even if I get one or two guys to get hired, guess what? That's two guys that didn't apply, that aren't going to apply because they're not even trying to do the recruitment process. Now that comes into play with, I can't get qualified applicants to apply, or they are applying, but I get, out of 10 guys, only 2 pass the background check. Well, guess what? If you were marketing and trying to push your agency out there, how about instead of those 10 applicants, now you have 20 potentially, or even 15. So now instead of only hiring 2 to pass, you hired 4. That's 2 extra bodies, man. That is a lot of bodies. Even 1 or 2 can make a huge difference. So just doing those basic things. Now, in terms of the background process, I know for a fact that they failed out a very qualified individual with good experience because he drank alcohol after work daily, not to excess either. He verbatim, like I go home and I have 3 to 4 beers every night. And according to the background person that did this check at the sheriff's office, she said that's too much alcohol, okay? When in reality, her husband and everybody else there drinks very often. And the fact is that you have a guy that's well qualified fail out on a background check like that, but then you have all these other people that are in administrative levels that have created, way worse crimes, or other guys in general. And it's like, well, or the guy that runs the background check unit, man. He got demoted and pulled out of the jail and be in charge of backgrounds because he was illegally tased 2 people. But you're going to disqualify this guy to get judged by that guy because he drinks every day after the job. Give me a break. He is not drinking and driving around. That wasn't the case. So it's like you're disqualifying. And that's my question too. Why are you disqualifying these people? Right. And it comes down to personalities. What we found out later about this guy, the real reason is it was a personal issue. Okay. I'm just going to say that. And we found that out later, but it's excuses. And that's the other problem that comes into this place. It's the, like, who and the biases and everything like that. And if they don't like your personality, you're probably not going to make it. And that can go into, you didn't pass the background. You didn't qualify. It's like, well, that's not always the case. And yeah, maybe that is an acceptable number, 2 out of 10. That's, probably sounds about right, depending on the level of, number of people. But again, if you're generating interest in your department and you're showing that it's a good place to work, showing the money that you make, showing the specialty units you can get into, the beautiful place that it is, all the things that you can do and recreationally and all these things, if you're going out and actively marketing, going all over the state of California and to other states too. This was one of my ideas. Go up to Washington, when they had that huge exit of cops from Seattle, Washington, because of what they were doing up there. I'm like, why are we not going up there? Why are we not trying to poach some of these guys? Say, come down here and do this. The other thing too, Covelo specific. So Matt Kendall has a $20,000 hiring bonus for lateral applicants, right? I think for people that have been cops that want to come over and work. Okay, so let's get into the hiring, to the bonuses for being a resident deputy. Every area has one. The South Coast, Boonville.
I just want to stop you on one thing, Trent, just on the issue of if it was just about money, and you raised a good point about the culture, and because I want to put I think a point on this discussion by saying that nothing in human beings is just about money, really, or bonuses and such. If it was, I mean, because we know that, for instance, getting people to join up in the army, for instance, is a very highly variable thing. Like, and it depends on the army and the circumstance, doesn't it, Trent? I mean, like, it'd be, I think, a real challenge right now for Vladimir Putin to recruit guys to join the Russian army. That would not be an easy sell right now, would it? I mean, Putin could say, I can't get people to fill my ranks. Nobody's joining the army. I mean, and they're not going to join as long as the army is run by a very bad man that's doing bad things, right? I mean, that's kind of an over problem.
Right. And that goes back exactly. So, and I said this earlier, I said the money is an excuse and it can be a motivational factor for some, but it's like, at the end of the day, how does Matt Kendall know that? How does he know he's losing people to these various agencies just on the sole reason of money? Did he go and ask them? Hey, Billy Bob John, that I've never met in my life, I see that you just got hired at Sonoma County SO. Why did you not come apply for me? No, he did not. So he's creating assumptions in his mind. And again, it is another excuse. Am I going to be perfect with this? Am I going to be able, if I was a sheriff there, would I have been able to hire 50 new dudes? I'm not saying that at all, man. I'm just saying that there are things that could be done to potentially generate interest, retain people. That is the biggest thing too, man. It's not just getting new bodies in. It is, like I said, keeping the ones that you have happy, which has never been the case the entire time that I worked there. Okay. And I guarantee you it has not changed. And I know that that's true too. Okay.
What would you say is the primary driver in people leaving the department?
Bad administration, 100%. Bad leadership.
Explain more. What, like, is it there people like good? I would like you to tell me what was your experience about good deputies, people you thought were good at their job and should be the kind of people you want on the sheriff's unit.
Yeah.
What were the specific drivers of them out? Was it they got chicken shitted out by IA things, or was they couldn't stand that some rapist was in charge of the unit, or what?
Yeah, so a little bit of all, right? So unfortunately, and again, this is not just applicable to Mendocino County Sheriff's Office, but a lot of agencies, the cops, they're type A personality, right? Generally, they have a similar mentality because it really takes a certain type of person to be successful or to want to be a cop, right? But in terms of the administration and when, bad leadership and stuff like that, the propensity for immaturity, pettiness, and vindictiveness is abundant. It's very common in the administrative level. And that's because these guys are promoting their friends, not based on qualifications. So that was an issue at the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office. Some of these guys that are in the leadership roles are getting promoted based on, I actually got told this by, the captain. It's like, I got to promote him. He's been here for whatever, a certain amount of years. And it's like, or he did the best on the written examination. That does not mean just because you do good on a test does not mean you have the qualifications to be a good, effective leader and supervisor. That has nothing, and it's proven too. That has nothing to do with anything, man.
Well, I mean, I have to correct you, Trent. In at least it may not make you an effective supervisor, but you don't even get to be in a sheriff if you you've just told me of an example where they backgrounded a guy out for just being honest. So this guy's contention that did get promoted, that he did it just based on written, you're saying in reality they shouldn't be happening, but those in fact things are happening, aren't they?
Here's a prime example. I had a sergeant, great guy, had been around forever. I'm talking 25 years, right, plus, and he's retired now, but he had put in for a lieutenant position, okay, and overall general consensus would have been in terms of the guys that like me that were on the street, a much better person than the other guys that were applying. But guess what? He lost because he doesn't test well. He did not test well. He gets nervous and trips out and stuff. And this guy tested better than he did, but is a horrible supervisor. But the problem with that, man, is the fact that it trickles down to the community like Covelo. So for example, when you have a bad leadership, and part of the reason why I chose to voluntarily quit the sheriff's office, right? And I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get fired or nothing. is because it goes back to that optics thing. When I'm trying to tell my lieutenant the proper way to police Covelo and what needs to happen, the things that I'm hearing complaints from the community, and they don't give a shit. They're going to keep doing it because, again, it goes back to that immature attitude where, like, I know what's best. You know, I'm not going to, they don't listen to criticism or new ideas or better ideas. And when you run into that issue, you know, when you take something as serious, like I took my job very serious, right? And I took a lot of pride in it. And when I hear that and I get no help and assistance and they're doing the exact opposite of what I know needs to get done, it's like, why am I going to keep working here, man? And that's why I chose to leave. You know, part of the reason I chose to leave. And it's like, so bad leadership means it's different for every guy, you know, but I know guys that have left to Sonoma County Sheriff's Office from Mendocino County Sheriff's Office that at one point were not going to leave, but because they ran into issues their own with the administration, they chose to leave. And it comes down to, again, not being able to listen to your guys, treating them like dirt, forcing them to work themselves into the ground while you're just chilling, not doing anything, or you know, some of these other guys, like everyone's experiences are differently. Me personally, I had a moral and ethical issue working for some of these individuals, knowing what their personal history is. So that had always bothered me my entire career, the more that I found out. But then when you get into the fact that they're potentially making a community worse or not helping make it better more efficiently, that's when I drew the line. I'm like, okay, you're going to completely destroy or not listen to me and make a town, you know, worse than it is, or not do what I'm suggesting, because I am right in the situation, because at the time I was the expert. My lieutenant, Andrew Porter, was not. He didn't know a damn thing about Covelo other than the couple of things he went out there to see. So he doesn't know shit about it. He never lived there, didn't have any friends there. So it's like, you don't know. And Matt Kendall, yeah, man, he's from Covelo, and I've heard him say that exact same thing 18 million times in a wide variety of press releases, town meetings, and on its face, it goes into the optics issue, right? Like, I'm not saying he doesn't care about that town. I know his parents there, he's from there and stuff like that, but it's to immediately give you the impression that just because I'm from an area means I automatically care above all else. And people that don't know any better, they're going to hear that. Again, in my opinion, it goes down to optics. Again, I grew up in Ukiah. I'm from Ukiah. I went to Nokomis Elementary, Pomalito Middle School, and I graduated from Ukiah High School. And guess what? I didn't choose to work in Ukiah, man. I chose to work in Covelo. And I shouldn't like make it sound like I don't give a shit about Ukiah at all, but I mean, like, I cared in terms of my personality and what I wanted to do, and what I ended up being very good at is I wanted to do that job specifically in Covelo. Some people want to do it in Ukiah, you know, most do. And I didn't want that. Right. But I want to kind of segue to, and this is applicable to like a solution, right? So again, going back to the resident deputy bonuses. So resident deputy bonuses means you live in an area of an unincorporated county in Mendocino County, and there's only a few that have this position: the South Coast, Boonville, and Covelo. Okay. And what happens per policy, you get a resident deputy bonus, which is monetary. You also get free medical, so you don't have to pay for any medical benefits. Okay. And then there's a couple other things as well, but it goes in tiers. So the first year you work out there, this was prior when I was there, you get $5,000, okay, extra bonus for working in a place for a year and living there. The second year you get $7,500. The third year you get $10,000. Okay, those bonuses are taxed at 50%, not 30%, not 35%, where, you know, like your paycheck would. 50, if not more, depending. You know, it's high. Okay, so when it comes down to motivational factors for resident deputy positions, because they're not filling Boonville, they're not filling South Coast. Again, they don't even have the bodies, quote unquote, to do that. Okay. Even though when I was a resident deputy in Covelo, we were still short-staffed everywhere, but I still lived there. Okay. So again, Tom Allman, the prior sheriff, who's not from Covelo, was able to make it work. Andrew, you say Matt Kendall's a good sheriff. I don't believe that. He might be somewhat effective. He is not even close to the same level or caliber as Tom Allman was. Okay. And people have their different varying opinions on that. I have mine and what I saw. Tom Allman did not grow up in Covelo, and he was light years more effective than Matt Kendall has ever been, going in there and saying, I'm from there. Okay. But in terms of the bonuses, right? So you know, and this is actually a funny conversation, you know, so, and I'm going to,
so wait, I just want to get that point. You're contending in your comment is that Tom Allman was much better at policing Covelo and community relations in Covelo than Matt Kendall. Yes.
Yeah, but it's also, yes, undeniably. And various community members, not even in Covelo, man, when I was running for sheriff and I was going to Fort Bragg and stuff like that, people would say that. Because Tom Allman he was more of a politician type. He was better, had more social skills. He was better at speaking, public speaking, and he liked to get out and mingle. But and Matt Kendall's not any of those things, right? And you have to, I'm not saying Matt Kendall doesn't care about anybody in the community. I'm not saying that. But obviously I have my own belief, reasons to think the way that I do. But Tom Allman was better suited to be a sheriff than Matt Kendall is. He was more effective. Okay. And to do that job effectively,
but even in Covelo, he was more
massively. Yes, absolutely. And not only that, man, Tom Allman listened to what I had to say about Covelo, which was really cool because he knew that I was boots on the ground and I knew what was up and what was going on. He said, Trent, what's going on out here? Tell me, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? What resources do you need? And I said, hey man, I'm working on this. It'd be cool if you could send me up an extra body on this day or whatever the case is, man. Or the school's having issues with this, can we do this? And yes, every time, right? So again, but then Tom Allman leaves and we get stuck with the mess that's in there now. And I'm not getting that. I'm getting kickback because personalities don't jive, right? And when you don't get along with somebody personally and you work in an immature working environment, you run into these issues where they're going to spite you just because they don't like you, and they don't care if it has an impact on the community at all. They get back at you and it's all good. But for the bonuses,
does Matt Kendall have issues in terms of and let me put it a different way. Does Matt Kendall have problems with relating to Covelo? In other words, are there people he can't get along with that he needs to get along with there?
So in my experience, and Matt Kendall was sheriff when I lived out there, okay? And people still tell me this that I talk to. There are a lot of people in Covelo, and people can say this isn't true, but it is factual, okay? That do not like him, a lot. And that is a very small community. So, and it's people that have been around forever, okay? Matt Kendall is from there, but he mostly talks to the elders or people the old rancher guys that have been around, forever. He's not out on the res mingling like I was. Okay. He's not going into the schools. He's not going into the businesses. I didn't see that once when I worked there. Okay. And the community did not see that either. So he would fall back on
the question I'm wondering though about does Matt Kendall, does he actually, because on this issue of him using this fronting thing of I'm from Covelo, that's the first thing. The question I'm asking though is that actually in fact a negative for the community and Matt Kendall? In other words, do you believe that there are people, that just don't want to work with Matt Kendall or won't work with him effectively?
Yes, I haven't even been there forever, and I still talk to a lot because I developed a lot of relationships while I was there, man. And not only did I get a lot of that in person when I worked there, or that people were wanting Tom Allman back. And there's some people that didn't like Tom, okay? Some that prefer Kendall to Tom and vice versa, but overwhelmingly it was Tom. But now I still get messages saying that Kendall's not doing anything. He acts like he cares. He hits us with people see that too. He hits us with the I'm from there, just like Rosento can say, we can tell when people care and they don't care. But I'll say Kendall's out of touch.
Well, on that point, Rosento Cordova said that to me, and he said that we can tell when people care and don't care. It's been years since anybody did care and wanted to be here. He said another thing about this difference between the way he was treated when he was on the force down in Covelo versus Laytonville. Now, I want to ask you, is this does this go to is Matt Kendall? These ways of people. Do you believe that Mr. Cordova is saying that we don't get out of Matt Kendall these service commitments and delivery that we should be getting? Is that what he's saying?
Well, that's what I don't know. That's what it sounds to me like. That's what he's relaying to you. I haven't talked to Rosento about that, right? So I do know that from the people that I have talked to him. I haven't talked to him for a while. But the people that I have talked to, they're in agreement with him. They're not getting the allocated resources they need. But that's, like I said, a tale as old as time. But when they say that, they have the optics thing up front, right, where they get the immediate response, and then what ensues is the excuses, the laundry list of excuses from the sheriff. Now, in terms of, so I've given some solutions to some of these things, like the staffing, marketing, opening it up to getting more applicants, like maybe getting somebody else in charge of the background check, because that guy should not be, for a whole slew of reasons, in charge of that position. And it's not just you get bad supervisors that are cops, you get bad ones that are in charge of the hiring process too, that are getting rid of good, solid guys that they shouldn't, based on, in that one case, a personal problem. Okay. Now, and also the staffing thing too, like still send a guy out there, man. Like you got 2 guys, still send them when they can. If something else is popping off, whatever, have your sergeant come in and work a shift. Like they're not above that. They're still a patrol guy. Like and that never happened either. When I was there, it's like, have a sergeant come in, man. You're short staffed. Use a guy. He's a badge and a gun. Why does he get, his days off? And some sergeants do work overtime, but it's like, if you need another man just to fill Covelo, do it. And in terms of the contention that Matt Kendall says that he feels, I'm getting, grief from other areas of the county. Who cares? Who cares? Your job is to be a sheriff, as you've stated before. And it's like, you're going to get that no matter what, man. So you're saying that it's problematic when you get grief from Ukiah or Willits or Laytonville, but it isn't when you get it from Covelo. It's all good. And who's complaining in reality? Like, okay, you're going to have somebody in Laytonville saying, we're not getting enough people out here, which does happen. Okay, I've seen that. But usually it's a certain type of individual that would say that we're not patrolling Laytonville enough. Okay. But when you have that as sheriff, you got to do what is best overall for the community. Okay. And the current issues that they're facing, you cannot appease everybody. You can't make everybody happy as much as we would want to. Even when I lived in Covelo, I would still piss people off because I wouldn't do what they would want me to do, but I did what I thought was right and for the betterment of the community. So in this case, is Covelo going to need more of a presence right now than Laytonville? Yeah, it is. I hate to tell you that. Not that you should leave Laytonville completely unattended, okay? But there are ways to do that. So like, for example, you have 2 guys, a guy and a sergeant, right? Or 2 deputies and a sergeant working. That's a typical shift. Okay. Send that 1 deputy to patrol Brook Trails. Send the sergeant to patrol Laytonville, Leggett, Piercy, show a presence. Send 1 guy to Covelo. Or if you don't have a sergeant, you have 2 guys. The Willits guy, patrol, just be seen, fly the colors. That's what they say, which, shows your vehicle. And it's like, you can still show a presence. And that's the grief that he's talking about, not showing a presence. Okay, so you can still do this optics shit in other areas of the county, okay, and still allocate more resources to Covelo. But also at the end of the day, how do they know that he's allocating more resources to Covelo? Does he tell people in Laytonville that? Like, hey, we're not coming out because I got to send people to Covelo. I mean, why is he not hitting them with we can't hire more people, I can't staff it, blah, 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 blah. And maybe he is. But at the end of the day, like, again, you're going to get flack no matter what. Okay. But predominantly it's flack from Covelo, and it has been for years. And I saw that. Okay. When I worked there, it would come in from Willits, actually never Willits. It would come in from Laytonville occasionally, maybe North, even though North didn't really like law enforcement presence too much, like the Piercy area, you get into the people that live in the woods and stuff. But predominantly they did, like law enforcement for the most part. But the majority of the complaints, and I guarantee you this is still the case, is coming from a lack of consistent presence in Covelo. And again, I'm like beating a dead horse here, but you can't use that as an excuse. Like, I can't come to Covelo because I'm getting shit from other people in the community. So what, man? The right thing to do is to allocate your resources. And if he says he has a lion's share of the calls in Covelo, even more of a reason to do the right thing and allocate the resources. You're supposed to do what's right. You're in charge. You're top. When he's saying I'm getting grief because I'm sending too many resources to Covelo. No, he's not. He is not. What the people see is what gets printed. It is, we're hammering them during these 2 weeks max enforcement period. And then you have other areas of the county. Wow, why don't we get that many cops? People are not complaining because they're saying, Matt Kendall sends 1 deputy in to patrol Covelo. daily. He makes sure that he does that. Nobody sees that. Nobody even knows that he's doing that. Even if he is, it's you're patrolling your beat. So no one's going to give him grief and shit for that. Okay. Like I said, they're giving that. And at the end of the day, he's contradicting himself, right? Because he's saying that I don't have the bodies to commit to anywhere. Okay. But he's saying that he's getting grief because he's committing too much to Covelo. But the people in the community, including Rosento, are saying that he's not staying though. So it's like, how are you committing too many resources? What that translates to is I'm committing a shitload of resources up front to show that I'm reacting to this. And that's what the people see in the community. And that's why they say, well, why does Covelo get all this special treatment with all these fishing game guys, CHP, all these deputies? And again, it's for a very short time period. And again, they are not complaining because he's assigning one guy to go in and do patrols and talk to the community in Covelo. No one's going to give him shit for that. So again, it is another weak illusion, diversion, sleight of hand tactic it's an excuse at the end of the day. So the sheriff's office currently is a reactive versus proactive approach to Covelo. Okay. And it should be the complete opposite. Vast majority. You should be 90% proactive, 10% reactive, or whatever. The percentage of proactive should far outweigh. And that means, again, more of a community policing standpoint, but the allocation of resources, it's absolutely ridiculous. Again, I never once heard that. I never got a complaint for that. When I was back, it was just me and one dude, and I was personally going into Covelo and doing extra patrols at the schools and stuff. We never got calls from people in Laytonville or Ukiah or Fort Bragg saying, hey, I heard there's a deputy out there talking to the principal at the high school. Why can we not get that same deputy over here? Or why are you sending one? Like, no one's saying that, man. That is absolutely insane. That doesn't even make any logical sense. Why would you? That's not a reality. Okay. But I do want to touch on one more solution, Andrew, for the resident deputy position. And it's like, there's a lot to go into this, and I could talk about this issue for like 12 hours, but at the end of the day, I don't have the power to make any of these changes, obviously, right? I'm not the sheriff. I'm just Monday morning quarterbacking the ever living shit out of that guy because he's doing a bad job and he has for a long time. And he's not, it's a fact. He could be doing things much better than he is. And, some people are going to disagree. They're going to think that, I'm a quote, disgruntled ex-employee, even though like I chose to leave that place. Right. But it's what I see and what I know. Okay. And my expertise.
Well, critically, you said Allman as sheriff performed better than Kendall as sheriff. Yes.
In my opinion, and also the opinions of a large majority of a lot of people there. That is a stunning, observation. It's not, like I said, it's not just exclusive to Covelo. And again, I saw this when I went to the coast also to campaign, which Matt Kendall didn't do because he made it a point to say, I'm not even going to acknowledge Trent. I'm not even going to acknowledge he's running against me because I know I have this in the bag because Trent gets to only campaign for a week as a write-in candidate. And he knew based on the statistical probability, just based on those facts, that he was going to win. So he didn't do shit. And like I said, this is something that I've heard from other people in various parts of the county too, that they prefer Tom Allman. Can we get Tom Allman back, whatever? But I want to talk to one more solution here about the resident getting people out in Covelo. And again, there's multiple, it starts from the top down, like I've always said, and within the agency itself, the bad leadership, retainment, marketing yourself, not falling back on excuses. If you short-staffed, call people in for overtime or you can still allocate some of these people out there. Make sure that they're not going out, and the people that do go out there, man, it's like a Friday, Saturday night. You get two new guys out there that are just interested in quote unquote having fun and pulling people over and getting guns and stuff. I had my fair share of that too when I was brand new. I'm not discounting that, but that's the main presence that you're having in Covelo. You're not having the interaction. But the other thing too is again, I've been trying to talk about this a little bit, but the bonuses that you get as a resident deputy, and I told you like the various years. So, when I was on my way out of the sheriff's office and, I left for multiple reasons voluntarily again, it was, I worked and lived in Covelo and I got, by myself for a long time and I did a lot, right? I took on the job of, I should have had 3 or 4 other guys like they did back in the day. They shared the workload. Even if I had one other partner out there, man, oh my God, full time, I could have gotten so many more things done. But I'm a human being, man. I can only do so much, right? So, and then again, it takes a certain type of person. But anyway, at the end of the thing, the money, argument I want to bring up, right? So Matt Kendall's, one of his main excuses is the fact that he cannot compete financially in terms of bonuses with these other agencies, right? Okay, which is comical for the reasons that I stated. But resident deputy bonuses, the whole thing about this is, man, they're offering people a bonus, that same bonus of 20 grand just to get hired, okay? So instead of not being able to hire, they can't hire anybody, right? According to Matt Kendall, he's tried everything he can, even though he's tried nothing. He just falls back on the excuse, Sonoma County makes more. So instead of allocating those bonuses to people you're not even hiring, so they have the budget for those, $1,000s bonuses, why don't you allocate those things toward a resident deputy position? Why don't you make the resident deputy bonus 50 grand, for example, plus free housing, plus free medical? Maybe that will drive some interest in your resident deputy positions, or people applying as laterals that have good quality experience to generate that interest to get them out there. Again, you still have to sift through the bad ones. You have to do the good background check. You have to make sure that they're the right personality, the right temperament. There is an extensive process that's going to go into, not just generating interest, but also getting, like I said, the right individual out there that's not going to get fired, that's going to be able to relate to the community and talk to people and these sorts of things. But that could be a solution. And it's like you have but then he's going to, technically, the board of supervisors only approved this to be used for this reason. There is a solution to every problem. Every problem, there is a solution. There is a workaround on that. It's just they don't want to. Okay. And it's like, or they haven't thought of it, or they don't care to. So again, just because you offer more money doesn't mean that you're going to get the right person. You could potentially get somebody that just wants the money and they're going to go in there and fuck it up. But you stop that beforehand. You have an interview process. For example, if you have somebody that currently works at the sheriff's office, they see that 50K bonus, they see the free housing, medical and stuff, and they say, I want to put a memo in to go do that job. You still have to have an adequate screening process though, too, because you don't want the wrong person out there that is just money hungry. But again, you have to give incentive, but so you don't want to get the wrong person that just is all about the money. So have an adequate screening process to make sure that's not the case. You can't hire a brand new person fresh out of the academy to go do that job either. So it either has to be a lateral, somebody with a good deal of experience, somebody that's worked there already with a good deal of experience, and then maybe have a tribal representative too, sit on that, have like an interview process like you do with specialty assignments, because that is a specialty assignment, like you would with SWAT or canine or detectives, where you have an interview process you have to go through. And it's like, what makes you qualified to do this? And you look at their service history, their complaints, how they've interacted with the community, what their partners say about them, what you've seen, what their supervisors have seen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their interest in that town at all. Are they good at community policing? So there's a lot of things that can go into that. And like I said, you can have even a Covelo tribal rep come in and sit on that oral board panel as a citizen and, think like, yeah, this could work potentially. Not that they would have the ultimate say necessarily, but just as like an opinion of somebody that lives in that community that's a part of the tribe. So there are a lot of other things that you can do, man. And there's, pushback that I can get on everything that I said, in terms of, Matt Kendall can push back, or other people that side with him, like, Trent, that's a stupid idea, that's not going to work, or we've tried that, it didn't work. And I'm just giving you my opinions and the things that most of these things I do know for a fact based on my expertise and my experience and what I've seen visually and heard. And it's, so there's no disputing most of what I've said at all, because it's all facts, and especially the attention it needs right up front for a couple of weeks and then disappears forever. So if I was, and I guess it's people say, well, Trent, it's easy for you to sit there in your chair in currently in Texas or whatever and bash the sheriff and whatever. And it's like, I was bashing the sheriff about doing a bad job when I was still living in Mendocino County, when I was still a deputy at the sheriff's office. I was part of the reason I left, because he wasn't doing a good job. When I was walking around in Covelo as a deputy, I was criticizing him and what was going on with his administration. So this isn't anything new that I'm saying right now. I've had these arguments forever, okay, while I was still employed there. And they don't listen and they don't care, but they like to give I'm from there, so I care. Or I sent dudes in for 2 weeks, I care. And, but so I guess like to make change in that, there's a lot of factors, and Matt Kendall is right in that. There's a lot that goes into that problem. I haven't even touched on a lot of it either. just for sakes of time, but it starts from the top down. It starts within the administration, within the sheriff's office, because that has a direct effect of what goes on within the community. Like, you don't have bodies for Covelo, it's because of the sheriff's office. You don't have like people that want to stay, it's because of the sheriff's office. You can't hire people because of the sheriff's office. You have people that are, leaving sheriff's office and lack of marketing to get new recruits, sheriff's office, not looking at upping the budget or allocating the bonuses to a resident deputy position, the sheriff's office. So a lot of these, the blame, instead of blaming everything else, he should be blaming himself and his administration, because that's the main problem. That is the root of the problem. It's not the alcoholism and drugs in Covelo. That's a factor that attributes to crime everywhere in the world, man. Okay, like, give me a break. All right, it's not exclusive to Covelo. I know he's not saying it's only in Covelo, but I'm kind of being a smartass. But give more solutions and have the maturity to finally admit that you're wrong about something and that you can get presented with a better idea and listen to it. But those guys don't do that. And that is the core root of the problem, and why Covelo will continue to suffer and not have the attention that it needs. But the fact is, Andrew, the comical thing about this is, why would anybody, deputy-wise, as a lateral or anybody, they see that there's a $20,000 hiring bonus just to get hired here at the sheriff's office and like go work in Ukiah, for example, but they're offering the same bonus to go live in a very isolated, secluded area of the county and police it, and undertake that whole thing and all the work and stress that comes along with it. It's the same money. No. Like that, no one's going to want to do that, man. At the end of the day, we don't get into the cop world for money necessarily, right? You shouldn't be driven solely on money, although you get into a career that is a specialty, occupation, and very demanding in a lot of aspects. And you also want to make a living. You want to be able to live comfortably and support your family, your kids, your wife, whatever, your parents. You don't want to have to worry about money when you're dedicating your most of your life, because you spend most of your time at work, to a community that you're serving and trying to better. So it's like, yeah, you should be compensated for that. If you're gonna play the blame game and excuses, man, like give some solutions. Sit down with your team, which none should have those jobs anyway, and critically think. Okay, so none of us have any experience in Covelo except for Matt Kendall, because I'm from Covelo, right? But he's also out of touch with that place, man. He's out of touch with Covelo. No, he's out of touch though, because he hasn't lived in Covelo since like the 80s. Okay, and he only goes out there occasionally for these town meetings and stuff. He's not involved
but he's from there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So he's not involved in a younger community. He's not getting out on the reservation. He's talking to the older generation there, the people that he knows, just like Shannon Barney did, that was generally hated out there. And it's like, you're not interacting with the people that you need to, so you can't fall back on that. But sit down with your team and critically think of solutions to these things. And so, like, say, instead of, as the sheriff, okay, man, I know when I go to this town meeting in Covelo, these 2 recent murders, I'm going to get hammered. Okay. I know that they're going to be, more, angry than usual, and rightfully so, because we're not giving them anything. We're not giving them any resources or bodies. And me, Matt Kendall, I know that I have the same excuses that never change. I keep giving them the same excuses. So team, let's brainstorm here. What can I give them this time for a solution? Just let's throw a crazy curveball and throw an actual solution out there for this, or what I'm going to do and implement. Right. So one of the things that he did say at this town meeting, and I talked to some people that went there that said that it was a joke, is he needs cooperation from the community, okay, to solve some of these crimes. How are you going to get cooperation from the community when you do not community police that place? And this goes into what Rosento said about, like, there's room for improvement on all sides. Okay, so this goes into a whole separate thing, right? But so part of the reason I was so successful out there is because I had a lot of community cooperation. But guess what? That was developed over years of community policing that place like there's no tomorrow. Developing personal relationships, trust, and rapport, like I've stated before. But Matt Kendall thinks, I'm just going to go out there to this town meeting, say we need your guys' help. And it's like, well, how are you going to do that, man? They don't like cops for the most part, and for a lot of good reasons. But all you're doing is showing them this maximum enforcement reactive policing model. and you're not doing any of the things that I did or that prior good resident deputies did. And it's like, so how are you going to get cooperation, man? Why would they want to give you cooperation? It's like you have guys going in there being RoboCop and not treating people with respect, and it's not a positive interaction, man. So you're not going to get the level of, and that's just proven. It's proven. I got more cooperation the longer that I worked there, the more that I got to know people than I did when I was brand new. Okay. And it's just a fact of life. It's a fact of that world and the fact of community policing. And it's like, you're not, again, if you're going to say those things, which for the most part are true on their face that he said, give some good, adequate solutions to saying what was relayed to me that he said at this community meeting. So whether that's, I don't know if he's not getting any, I believe he's getting some, I believe that he's getting some support from the tribe out there. I'm not saying that, but he said what he said. If he said that, like I said, common sense tells me he's not getting enough. Or what he meant by that is, and this can be true also in Covelo, is that there is a heavy presence of no snitch mentality. Like, don't snitch, don't tell on each other. And that comes down to a very select group of people that happen to be the ones involved in the majority of the crimes, right? So he means that there are people that, and this is how I got to solve crimes, because there are people that know things, but they will only talk to certain law enforcement officers or certain people about that stuff, or being willing to go on record about it even. And like I said, that's a smaller population, but but again, when solving some of the more heinous, egregious crimes, it becomes imperative to have that relationship. But those guys aren't going to cooperate with cops, the ones that you want to get the information from, because you go to a town meeting and say, we need your help. Like, that's not going to work, man. You have to like actively get personable with these people, face-to-face interactions daily for extended periods of time, and get to know them and let them see that you are somebody that can be trusted with information. Because a lot of guys have had bad experiences with that too, man. They'll provide information. They want to remain an anonymous party. And that cop goes and tells somebody that person told him. And then guess what? Now they're able to snitch. Now they're getting beat up or shot or stabbed or whatever. And so there's a lot that goes into that. Overall, again, it goes back to the complexity of the issue. And, it's just, but there's a solution to every problem. You just have to be willing to accept criticism, accept new ideas, accept that you can be wrong, and look at outside the box. And don't do so. The sheriff's office, and why I hope all those guys leave, is because they're of the older generation, and in law enforcement, they policed in the 90s. Okay. And that has no place in today's policing world. Our society is vastly different. Laws are vastly different. Ideals are different, and what people value are different, and they think differently, and it's reflected in their work and reflected in what they do. And they think that this was part of my sheriff's campaign too. This is the thing that like seals their coffin in, man, when they don't do anything and everything stays the same for years on end. We've never done it that way before. Okay. And since they've not changed it up, they continue down the same stupid path that has the same results. It's legit. That's the definition of insanity, man. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's why I said, dude, this is not working for you guys. I'm telling you. And again, we don't care. We know what's best. Go to hell. And like I said, I mentioned that during my campaign, I got asked that by members of the community, what would you do differently? That was a hot topic. What are you going to do different than what we've had so far? And it's like a lot of things. And some of them I talked about, some I didn't have time for due to my short campaign timeline. But it's the reason why I say a lot of those guys got to go is their personalities and quite frankly, their age, due to, not that they're super old, but the fact that they grew up in a different generation and they are stuck in their ways based on an old style of policing. Because you got to remember, man, like those guys back in their day violated civil rights, beat up people unjustifiably. I've heard the stories from some of those guys that work there, and it's just how it was, though. That was commonplace. You're stuck in those ways, man. It's not good. I mean, those are the same guys that still think, facial hair and beards are unprofessional on the job. It's like all those agencies got rid of that nowadays. It's 2023, and the problem is they can't get with the times. All right. And that goes along with the closed-minded thinking, their mentality and everything. And overall it becomes problematic. But I will state that, again, the biggest issue here and this is, I'd hate to say this, and I don't want this to happen at all, man. Like, I want Covelo to be taken care of. I really do. I care about that place a lot. I mean, I put everything I had into it for a long time, but I don't want to put this negative energy out there, but like from what I've seen in my experience for years on end, they're going to keep getting this, man. They're going to keep getting this immediate reaction because it's the optics. They're going to get, and then bam, hit with all these excuses, the same ones that have been going on for years. And then it's like, and then nothing changes, man. Then the 2 weeks are up for the maximum enforcement and it goes back to business as usual and excuses as to why they can't continue to do it. Oh, I'm getting crap from other people in the community. Oh, I can't hire people and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Matt Kendall and his administration could be trying to actively do something. No, they're not. I know they're not, because I used to have those behind closed doors conversations with those guys. So I know what they do. They don't do anything. Okay. And they give the illusion and the impression it's a magic show. All right. It's what they want you to see. It's what they want you to hear. It's done and said for a reason. And nobody can check them on that in the community that's a regular citizen unless you have worked for that agency and in that capacity. I can, because I've seen it and I've heard it. And like I said, I know what they're doing. And I saw it while I was still there, while I was on the street. And the thing about Tom too that I liked is he would do things. He would hear a complaint or an issue, and he would, he would try his best to create a solution for that, man. And him and I would have a lot of conversations about those things. And that's how I know that would get done. For example, he was coming in on his day off when they were complaining about too many speeders in town. And that's a CHP function.
Too many what?
Speeders, people speeding in town.
Okay.
And people riding on their dirt bikes and stuff. This was like at a town meeting in Covelo one day. And so Tom Allman, that's a CHP function though. It's an unincorporated area. That's their job to do traffic. Like we don't have radar guns and do speeding tickets and traffic enforcement, right? Oh, we can, we just don't. So he comes in on his day off in his work truck and monitors traffic. I didn't even know he was there. I pulled up next to him randomly. I'm like, oh shit. Hey, what's up, Sheriff? And he's like, hey man, I'm just out here he stayed there for hours, man. And he's on a Saturday. He should be home drinking beers or whatever, but he was an active part of that community. He really listened to what people said. So he didn't say at the town meeting, we can't do anything, town, about any of these reckless drivers. I can't do anything about it. That is not a main function of the sheriff's office. I can't even hire enough guys to do traffic enforcement, No, he didn't do that, man. He came out on his day off in his personal truck. That was his solution in his mind. He wanted to see what was occurring with his own eyes and, address it appropriately at that point. Okay, that's a good sheriff. Matt Kendall cares so much about Covelo. That's all he ever says. I'm from Covelo. I care about it. I care about the people. But he doesn't do anything. Yes. Well, okay, Matt Kendall, you're from there and you care about it so much. You don't have any kids that are small.
Can he pull a patrol? Can he pull a patrol?
Yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. Tom Allman did all the time. Then Matt Kendall, go back out there. You live there. You show a presence. It's just him and his wife, man. There's no reason why he can't go move out there. He's from there and he knows quote unquote a lot of people, Why not show that you actually care, dedicate. If I was a sheriff right now, I would personally be living in Covelo. No problem. Easy day. You can't find anybody to get hired. You can't find a resident deputy. And he's going to create a bunch of excuses for that. Like, oh, I have to be in Ukiah for these meetings and shit. No, you don't. I had court and stuff in Ukiah, man. You can just come out of the valley. Matt Kendall, go live in Covelo. That is my solution for you, my ultimate solution. Go live in Covelo, bro. You have no kids in grade school down in Ukiah that you have to make an excuse for. It's just you and your wife, and you can go move back out there. Your parents are out there. You love Covelo. You're from Covelo. Go ahead. And then maybe you can show that you actually care about that community.